This is Secretary Angela Jameson calling to order the meeting of the Inland Wetlands Commission on Monday, January the 23rd, 2023. Good evening, everyone. This is a hybrid meeting. We have quite a few people here at Town Hall, as quite a few other people on Zoom. And Chair Dan Stepanek has proposed that he and I switch positions just for this evening, and that I chair the meeting as I am here physically in New Canaan Town Hall, whereas he is zooming in and it's a little harder to chair. So would anybody like to make a motion to propose a chair pro tem for this evening, please?
Commissioner Jameson, this is Commissioner Bernelli for the record. I propose that you, Angela Jameson, serve as chair pro tem for this evening.
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All in favor. Thank you. Now we need a motion for a secretary pro tem, please.
Commissioner Bernelli for the record again. I move that Dan Stepanek serve as secretary pro tem for this evening.
And I second that. All in favor, please raise your hands.
Aye.
Everyone in favor. Thank you. So we before we move to the roll call and approval of the agenda, I just want to say that we're delighted to have First Selectman Kevin Moynihan join us this evening, and he's going to conduct an organizational meeting in just a few minutes. If you could just bear with us, please, while we do the roll call and approve the agenda. So please, with the Secretary Pro Tem, call the roll.
Thank you. Dan Stepanek, I'm here. Angela Jameson,
Present.
present. Beth Bernelli,
Present.
George Perkins,
Present.
I can't do that, can I?
Beth Sanford,
Present.
Anthony Zillow, absent. Priscilla Wokey,
Present.
Katie Owsley. Present?
Yes.
Okay. We're missing Angela. We're missing Anthony, Angela, so we'll have to get a substitute.
Right. So Commissioner Owsley, would you please step in for Commissioner Sillo?
Yes.
And be a regular member for this evening. Thank you so much. Now, everybody has the agenda in front of them. Hopefully you've looked at it. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I move we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Perkins. Seconded. Commissioner Wojcicki. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Everyone in favor. Thank you. Very good. So now I would like to turn the meeting over to First Selectman Moynihan, who will be conducting an organizational meeting which will elect officers, amongst other things.
Thank you, Angela. Good to be with you. I'm on by Zoom because I have another meeting outside the building tonight. And so good to see you all. Happy New Year. And I'd like to, first of all, thank you all for your service to the town with this commission. It's been a busy year last year for you, and thank you for your service. I would ask for nominations for chair for the ensuing year.
I would like to nominate Dan Stepanek as chair of the Inland Wetlands Commission.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any further nominations for chair? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Electing Dan to another term as chair. I can't see all the participants here. Angela, can you see who you have there? And Dan just voted. Who else is on by Zoom?
Yes, all the commissioners here present in Town Hall raise their hands in favor of Dan Stepanek as chair.
Anyone else on by Zoom? So you have
Yes, Dan.
Just Dan.
so that's unanimous.
It is
Yeah.
unanimous, yes.
Congratulations, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now for the role of secretary. Do I have nominations for secretary?
Kevin, I would like to nominate Angela Jamieson to continue as Secretary of the Inland Wetlands Commission for 2023.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further nominations? Hearing none. All in favor of electing Angela for secretary for another year?
Right. And everybody here in town hall, selectmen voted yes.
Congratulations, Angela. Thank you. Again, thank you all for your service. And appreciate all your service. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin, very much for reappointing me as chair of the new Canaan Wetlands Commission. Considering everything that happened in 2022, the commission had a very productive year, and we hope that the upcoming year will be just as productive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First Selectman, is there any other business or should we just proceed with? the meeting?
No other business. Have a good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For joining. Okay, I'd like to open the regular meeting. We have applications to be received and which will be scheduled for a future regular meeting. Application number 22-23-23, 1218 Smith Ridge Road, Timothy J. Kurt and Donna Bizette. Perform stream and remediation, remove sediment and algae from stream channel by suction vacuuming, stabilize disturbances, replant embankments as needed. Application 22-23-24, 62 Carter Street, Estate of Hartwell C. Self. In accordance with the section 16(3) petitions on boundaries, the applicant requests changes to the inland wetlands and watercourses map of New Canaan, Connecticut. We are required to hold a public hearing for petitions on boundaries. And I would like to propose that both applications would be heard actually at our March hearing on March 20th, 2023. I hear no comments, so that is what we will do. I'd like to schedule a site visit for March the 15th at 8 a.m. How many people can actually make that? 1, 2, 3, 3. Dan, are you able to make that?
I cannot, you said March 15th, is that correct?
March 20th.
No, you said March 15th.
Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. March 15th. You're absolutely right.
March
Site
15th.
visit. Yep.
I cannot make the 15th, no.
Okay. So so far we only have 1, 2, 3. I can't make that either. So we don't have a quorum for that date. What about another day that week?
Yeah, the week of March 13th, I think there's some conflicts with school schedules, so I think that's what is that our school schedule? That whole week? or-
St. Luke's for me, but.
Okay, got it. So the week of the 13th is available, except for maybe. And Dan, I believe, is still away.
Okay, so I could do the 16th of March.
What
So
day is that?
that is a Thursday. So could people raise their hands if they can make Thursday, the 16th of March? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll have a quorum.
So the
Does
5
that work
was,
for you?
yep,
Okay,
Beth, 2 Beths, was it? Both Beths?
both Beths.
George,
I can make it.
Priscilla,
Yeah,
and Angela?
unless something comes
Yep.
up.
And I'll
Very
check
good.
with Anthony. All right, so we'll go for the 16th, 8 a.m. and to do the site visit for those 2 locations. Thank you.
Very good. So now I'd like to open the public hearing, the continuation thereof, application number 22-23-11, 17 and 23 Hill Street.
Commissioner Jameson, as the commission is aware, I have a professional conflict which prevents me from participating in this matter. So I will be recusing myself at this point and leaving the meeting.
Very good. Thank you for notifying us of that. So this is the program that we thought we would follow today. We have the interveners who are going to continue their presentations first off, and then the commission will ask any additional questions. And then we will have comments from the public. The public have been extremely patient, attending a number of meetings now, and we think it's time that you should be able to put your point of view. If you want to actually come to the podium at that point and make a comment, we would ask you please to sign in here in the during the beginning of the meeting, so that we can actually call people in an orderly fashion. So then thereafter, after we finish the public comments, we will hear from the peer experts. Hopefully that program is fits with everybody. So now,
Before we move on,
Yep.
I believe we may have inadvertently skipped over item number
yes.
5, the minutes.
oh yes, beg your
So
pardon.
that's okay.
Okay.
We're just going to go backwards for a
Yep.
little bit.
Okay, so we have you have the minutes of the regular meeting, December 19th, 2022 in front of you. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look at them. Could I have a motion, please, on
Yeah.
whether to approve?
Beth Sanford, I move that we approve the meeting notes, the meeting minutes from December.
Very good. A second,
I'll second.
George Perkins. Thank you so much. All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Hands. Everybody raise their hands. That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Kathleen, for reminding me.
Thank Beth. He was signaling. us.
Oh. Very good. So back to 17 and 23 Hill Street, and I'd like to invite the interveners to continue their presentation to us.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Jonathan Shapiro from Aton Law Partners on behalf of the interveners, Mark Durkin, Jeffrey Stein, and the New Canaan Residents Against Destructive Development. Spoke at length last time when we left off last time. You were hearing from our experts from SE Minor and wanted to continue with them very briefly to clarify a few points from questions raised by the commissioners at the last meeting. And I'm going to start with Mr. Sindolo very briefly again. Mr. Sindolo, at the last meeting, you spoke about deficiencies in the retaining wall that is in the part of the proposed application. Just for clarity, what deficiencies were you referring to?
Right, so really it has to do with the proposed retention system that's directly behind the retaining wall. Generally, you don't want to infiltrate runoff directly behind a retaining wall, because what that ultimately means is that runoff is added stress and pressures on the retaining wall. So when you have a retaining wall of this size, you design it to relieve hydrostatic pressure by discharging that trapped groundwater somewhere downslope. The problem is, in this case, if you do that, negating the benefits of infiltrating the runoff in the first place, which are peak flow reduction, volume reduction, breakdown of contaminants, and pollutant removal. So really the issue here is that, you know, what's proposed to have a retaining wall that's structurally sound and also infiltrate runoff. And with the current design, I just don't see how you achieve both in such close proximity.
Mr. Sindolo, you just mentioned achieving the benefits of the storm design. What did you mean by that?
Right, so, you know, the whole purpose of a stormwater management network is to achieve those benefits of peak flow reduction, volume reduction, breakdown of contaminants. So if you have a stormwater system that's not functioning as designed, then you don't get those benefits. And ultimately what you end up with is increase in erosion, sedimentation, and flooding to, in this case, the wetland, which in my opinion constitutes an adverse impact.
You also spoke last time about issues with the peak flow rates. You discussed that the applicant didn't use the hydraulically furthest point from the designated point of concern, I believe were your words. First of all, why do you need to use the hydraulically furthest point from the designated points of concern?
When calculating peak flow rates, you have to use the hydraulically furthest point in order to get accurate values for peak flow rates. And ultimately, what happens here in this case, by not using the hydraulically furthest point, you end up with an actual increase of peak flow rates in the proposed condition. But basically what it means by not using that correct time of concentration from the hydraulically furthest point, what it means is that the proposed stormwater management system is undersized and will not function as designed. It won't meet the standards of the drainage manual as it is intended to.
Commissioner Perkins, during the last meeting, we were to receive updated flow charts. Are those available?
So there are, I'm not sure what you mean by updated flow charts. We have the
Commissioner Jameson requested in writing a clear and more easily understood analysis of the flow charts.
right, I think we provided those in the narrative.
Right, Commissioner Perkins, in our submission from SE Minor that we provided shortly in advance of the last meeting, all those calculations were within that package that you should have received. I know before the last meeting, you didn't have time to necessarily review it before the last meeting, but those are available in the SE
So
Minor.
they're in the packages that we have in front of us.
Right.
I'm not sure what you have in front of you, but there's a letter from SE Minor.
We have packages in front
Yeah.
of us.
And it was Rob's previous report, but I think one of these documents might show that, but someone else is presenting that, so I.
We had it in a couple of spots. One was in the letter from SE Minor. It was also part of our presentation materials that we had submitted last time as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If I could just interrupt really fast. I am trying to run the meeting and also capture everything. I just want to get a couple things on the record. I just want to say for the record, we do have Maria Coplet, our town engineer, is joining us by Zoom, so she's also on the call. We also have Michael Klein, the peer reviewer, soil scientist for the town of New Canaan on the call. We have Joe Canis, our PE peer reviewer, also on the call. So I know you can't see that, but they're on the call. So they are listening. There's a handful, about 28 or 20 or so other people from the public also on the call. So when we get to the chance to actually hear from the public, we'll make sure we'll grab those folks that might be zooming in if they care to make comments at this time. Let me just see if I've missed anyone. Oh, Attorney Gelderman, town attorney, is also on the call. Okay, sorry, just wanted to make sure that that was on the record.
Can we continue?
No, who's here?
Please do.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Sandolo, you mentioned adverse impacts to the wetlands as a result of the increase in the peak flow rates. What adverse impacts are you referring to?
Right, so an increase in peak flow rates will result in more erosion, more sedimentation, and more flooding. And in my opinion, those are all adverse impacts to the wetland.
Now, with respect to the overall stormwater management system proposed by the applicant, is that system designed to handle the increased volume associated with the increased flow rate you just described?
No, the proposed system would not have been designed for the increases in peak flow that were not accounted for.
Okay. And what is the implication of the inability of the system to handle that increased flow?
You'll end up with higher peak flow rates. You're not getting the runoff reduction volume that's required. You're not getting the water quality that's required. It all results ultimately, again, it all results in more sedimentation, more erosion, and more flooding.
Into the wetlands?
Right, and you know, downstream properties adjacent to the wetlands.
And what specifically with respect to the downstream properties from the wetlands?
They would experience more flooding with additional peak flow, with higher peak flow rates.
I mean, the properties themselves would have increased flooding.
Potentially, yes, yes.
And so in your opinion, does the stormwater system as proposed by the applicant to this commission have the reasonable likelihood of adversely impacting the wetlands by polluting, impairing, or destroying those wetlands?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to Mr. Liebman unless there's any questions for Mr. Sindolo at this time.
No,
Thank you.
let's move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lieben, good evening. You spoke last time very briefly about the importance of the wetlands and the values of them. In terms of those, the wetlands that are issue here, do these wetlands fall within those various values that you spoke about?
Yes, they do.
How so?
Well, there's 14 functional values that we associate when we're evaluating wetlands. 3 or 4 of these do not because they belong to the shoreline stuff. But the highest functional values are flood control, nutrient retention and sediment trapping, as well as urban wetland quality. It's very, very good to have an urban wetland around in an environment so that this way that it gives a place for the wildlife and everything else to be. It's to say that the wetlands are not of a high value is not an accurate statement. All wetlands, by the statute mandates that you deserve protection, as well as the fact that these wetlands here are important to the surrounding community.
And when you say they're important to the surrounding community, which communities are you referring to?
The actual wetlands themselves, as well as the and the town, as well as the the flood control, especially for the downstream properties or the adjacent properties, as well as the wildlife movement that's going to be there, and that they need to have a place to go. And I believe that flood control is probably the most important thing that this wetland does.
I just want to clarify a few things that you commented on the last time we were here. You talked about the Army Corps of Engineers being a wild card. What did you mean when you referred to the Army Corps of Engineers as a wild card?
Well, because I meant that the fact that the Army Corps of Engineers hasn't given their opinion or their mandate of what they need to do, what the applicant needs to do to satisfy their requirements, and you don't know what they're going to say. They can say that they would like some changes to the design that will go and cause further wetland impacts, and to prematurely move on the application wouldn't be in anybody's interest, especially then if the Corps says they want some changes, then you have to go back to start all over again. That's the wild card part.
You also talked last time about the blasting that will be necessary as a result of the removal of approximately 30,000 cubic yards. And you made a comment about you didn't know how they'll get there. What did you mean by you didn't know how they'll get there?
There's no plan of the blasting schedule and how they're going to get equipment to where the equipment needs to be to perform the change in elevation that's proposed on the plans. The only way that we see as logical is that they have to that the applicant would need to come up on either side in the buffer area of the wetlands, or change the activity of how they get to the top. When you blast, you're not going to blast from the bottom up. You're going to blast from the top down. That makes sense. Okay, and getting up there, there's a 40-foot change in elevation. And how do you, the plans are insufficient to determine what and how they're going to obtain access.
When you say how they're going to obtain access, do you mean to the top level?
To the top level, yes, sir.
Okay. And I think you mentioned it, but did you identify how they could access potentially the top level?
They would have to go into the wetland buffer to get up there. Because the equipment has its limitations as well. The equipment that's necessary to go up are excavators, the drilling rig. They may be on tracks, but nothing is going to be able to do it in one in a direct route. The only direct route pushes it to the sides, which is then in the regulated areas.
How long have you been an environmental scientist?
Around 35 years.
And in your 35 years, have you consulted on construction projects that would require blasting such as this?
Thousands.
And you mentioned that they would possibly have to go through the buffer areas of the wetlands. If that were to occur, in your opinion, is there a disturbance to the wetlands that will occur as a result of that?
At this point, they're gonna have to say yes, because we don't know how they're gonna do it. So if that is the only route that's gotta go through, then there'll be impacts to the wetlands. Again, there's not enough information to make a decision. And therefore, by going with where it is, there will be impacts to the wetlands.
And what sort of impacts to the wetlands would there be in that scenario?
As I stated earlier, the most detrimental impact of this whole operation is going to be during construction, where there's this strong potential for erosion and sedimentation. There's no, in the plans that I reviewed, there are nothing discussing dust control. And dust is the silica dust from drilling into the bedrock is not, they're not going to be able to bubble it down. So it's going to go and it's going to drop into the wetland, and that then causes a fine film of dust over everything and everybody and in the surrounding environment. And then that dust, then when it gets wet, it helps it turn to concrete. So it kills the top layer that's in the wetland, which can then go in. Obviously, that's a detriment to the wetland. It's an impact to the wetland when that happens.
And when you say when that happens, you're referring to the dust itself?
The dust itself, yes, sir.
Okay. And in terms of that, the dust, in your opinion, and I think you kind of touched upon this, but I'll just make sure we're clear. Will that have the reasonable likelihood of adversely impacting wetlands?
Yeah,
And what will it exactly do to the wetlands, in your opinion?
it would harm the wetlands by covering the benthic organisms as well as the upper layer. Besides making it uncomfortable for everybody in the environment around it. But if for the wetlands proper itself, it would definitely it would be impacted by inundating the wetlands with dust.
Now, at the last meeting, Mr. Kenny had given some discussion about the use of de-icing agents that the applicant proposed to use. Do you recall that?
Yes, I
testimony?
do.
And since the last meeting, have you had the opportunity to investigate that matter?
Yes. I read the articles that Mr. Kenny quoted, and I did some other research. And with that, he says that they were going to not use sand, salted sand. They were going to use a different calcium chloride or different things. Now, twofold, what he stated that they would use is the impact to that makes the water, when they use it, hypoxic. What hypoxia is lack of oxygen. Okay, it takes the oxygen out of the water column. You take the oxygen out of the water column, it receives into the water courses, ultimately into the 5 Mile River, and ultimately the Long Island Sound, which we all know is having a oxygen depletion problem. That's what hypoxia is. And so this de-icing agent that he's talking about, yes, it doesn't impact the plants by the calcium or the sodium content, but what it does do is it takes the oxygen out of the water, which is a long-term impact, which is something that's going to happen to the wetlands and the water courses, not only on site, but off-site. And the other thing that I found in the articles that he was quoting is, the articles, if I recall correctly, said salted sand is $1 a pound, and the other chemical that he's using is $18 a pound. Now, most of the time, these kinds of snow removal is given to a company. And they're not going to use the $18 a pound when there's $1 a pound de-icing agent. They're going to use the other salted sand. Salted sand has the ability, or sand and sodium has the ability to impact the wetland over the long period, over the long-term period. Okay, it creates a sodium plume that affects groundwater, that affects all of the animals and the plants that are in it. And it changes the composition in the soil that then the plants can't get the nutrients that's needed. All de-icing agents do that, not just salted sand, calcium. They all have that same effect on the wetlands is that they impact the wetlands in a negative way.
And just to be clear, when you were talking about the hypoxia, were you referring to the agent that Mr. Kenny was recommending to be used?
Yes, I'm trying to look at my notes of what that was. I think it's AMA or what?
Calcium, magnesium, acetate.
Yeah, calcium, magnesium,
Acetate.
acetate, yes. And the jury still isn't out on what the acetate part of that whole thing does to the long-term impacts to it. I tried to find things, but it is a better alternative than sand, than salt or straight salt. However, it's really the expense part is the other issue that needs to be, how is that enforced that that's what get used too?
And you said it's a better alternative, but nonetheless,
it still impacts the water column. If it depletes the oxygen in the water, in the receiving waters, then that's an issue. And you have to look at long-term. If this gets built, it's going to be there and it's going to happen. And so then over time is that cumulative effect that you have to be aware of.
and do you believe that the use of the MCA will have a reasonable likelihood of impairing or destroying the wetlands in this instance?
I do, in my professional opinion.
You also, a couple times at the last meeting, mentioned that you believe the wetlands would ultimately be, I think the term used would be choked off. And what did you mean by your expression choked off?
That goes right back to the dust, like we talked about, that I discussed about blasting. But the strongest potential of impacts to wetlands during construction and erosion and sedimentation control plant and sediment that happens. This is a large site. There's going to be a lot of work. There's going to be erosion control failures because that's the nature of what happens. Sometimes storms happen and just wash things away. That choking of the wetlands, the sediment gets, now the wetlands are supposed to catch nutrients and sediments and so on and so forth. When there's an excessive hit, I have been project managers of projects of things where we've had to go into the wetlands and remove the sediment that's happened, and that causes even more damage to the wetlands. So yes, the sedimentation to the wetlands is a detrimental impact and will impact the wetlands.
Okay. And you also talked last time about a number of pollutants that you believe would enter the wetlands, petroleum hydrocarbons, heavy metal, silt, sediment, all from the stormwater system. Do you believe the introduction of those pollutants into the wetlands will reasonably likely to destroy or impair the wetlands in this instance?
Again, I'm going to go back to, yes, I do. And I think that it's the long-term impacts that you have to be aware of as well. I think that the stormwater system, when you look at it, has 2 points of discharge. It has a level spreader and then a point discharge. So all of that's going to create just 2 points where the water is all going to go. And over time, it's going to go and it's going to choke the wetlands. It's going to go, and the heavy metals from and the petroleum hydrocarbons. I believe we talked about this the last time. What's acceptable to you? Okay, what's acceptable to you as a commission that you have to go and make the determination if the system will remove 80% of all of that stuff. Is that 20% that there's no numbers? They haven't given us any numbers to calculate or to look at, but is that 80% or is that 20% that's left over? Let's just use my theoretical numbers. You have 100 gallons of petroleum product that's going to be released into the system. 80 gallons is going to be trapped. 20 gallons okay to go into the wetlands? Into the groundwater system? In my opinion, that's not acceptable, or at least you should have the information to make to make what is acceptable, and that the applicant should be doing something that goes and not impacts the wetlands that way, because over the long term, again, over time, what will happen is the wetland will die.
Thank you. Unless there's any questions for Mr. Liebman, I believe we're going to turn it over to Mr. Durkin.
Do we have any questions from the commission?
None at this point.
I do. This is Dan.
Please, Dan, go ahead.
I have one comment, and that is, just so everybody understands, our commission does not accept different levels of wetlands. I mean, a low level, mid-level, high level. Our job is to protect the wetlands. So I don't want low level to be used. It's wetlands that we're protecting. The other thing is someone, Attorney Shapiro, going to talk about the silica that was mentioned in one of the presentations, or should we get into that now? When he mentioned dust, he mentioned dust. Is he were speaking about silica?
Yes, we are going to be addressing that.
You're going to be addressing that, okay.
I just had one follow-up
Want to
question.
talk briefly about
I'm
this?
sorry.
I do not know the chemical composition of the rock that's there, but if it's typical of Connecticut rock, there is going to be silica dust, silica within that rock that's going, and that dust is going to go and be airborne, as well as be in the sediment laden waters if the erosion controls don't work. And so that silica, then when it gets combined with regular earth and everything, will turn to concrete.
Hmm.
As
Thank
well
you.
as being a health hazard.
As a follow-up, Kathleen Holland for the record, just to follow up on that. I don't have thousands of jobs of experience that you have with rock crushing and whatnot, but in your experience, can you opine on any methods that other rock crushers utilize to prevent silica from getting in wetlands? That's first question.
Yes, I mean, there are many methodologies. And I will recommend you to go look at the International Erosion and Sedimentation Control Organization. That goes, and they have volumes of chapters of there are different ways to do it. We weren't hired to design how to make it work.
Yeah, we're just
So,
asking for your
but yes, there
experience.
are.
Yeah,
I mean, there was
great.
wetting procedures that need to happen. But then again, it's also how much of an enforcement issue are you going to have? You know, you can spray everything down while you're drilling. But is that going to happen every single time? Because you need a water source to do that. Then you need to capture that water and because it's going to be laden. You know, there's a lot of series of things that need to happen for this.
Okay, thank you. And I think this was a comment made by Rob. You mentioned water quality issues, but nothing specific. Do you have a specific example of what you would speculate on could potentially be a water quality issue to the wetlands at that location based on?
Right. So yeah, so what I was referring to was, I think I was speaking about peak flows at that time, and what I was saying was, if the peak flow calculation is wrong, then ultimately the proposed design and the different facilities would be sized inappropriately. And then at that point, you know, you're designing these things to capture the 80% minimum of total suspended solids and hydrocarbons and things like that. But if your facilities are undersized, then you'll have these different pollutants and different sediments and things like that getting through the system.
Okay.
And ultimately getting
Thank
through the wetland.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else for
Uh,
Mr.
If we have
Mr. Lee?
no further questions, please carry on.
We were turning it over to Mr. Durkin.
Yeah, my screen.
I have you as a co-host, so you should be ready to go.
Ms. Holland, I do have a number of blow-ups that I would like to display as I'm going to help explain the concepts. Because all the commission members are located on this end of the table
Sure.
or desk, I would like to set it up right here if that's all right with you.
You certainly can. If Mr. Stein shares his screen, he should be able to then get them up on channel 79. So yeah, sure. If you, I mean, each commissioner has them, but as you know, they're quite large. So
These guys.
it's these,
Yeah.
yeah, but he's going to be speaking of these, but not necessarily in order. So they're to be reviewed later, really. It's the best. Okay, you're looking good there. You're up on the screen there.
Good evening, commission members. My name is Mark Durkin. I live at 211 Brushy Ridge Road. I am a statutorily aggrieved party as I abut the subject property on its northeast corner. My property line abuts directly to the northeast corner. I have resided there for 27 years. So some of the presentation that I have is going to be actual observations of wildlife, water runoff, and flow of water over my driveway and into the subject property. I am an attorney. I am not a land use attorney. I'm a civil litigator, but I'm here as a homeowner and a statutorily aggrieved person, not as an attorney. There's been a lot of talk about the scope and the nature of the wetlands that we're talking about. I would like to present a short video of the wetlands that we're asking you to protect. When we had a site visit approximately 2 months ago, you were not taken anywhere near the wetlands. You were taken down the driveway to the east side. You were taken slightly north and you were taken slightly west. You were taken completely around the actual wetlands that we're looking to protect. I want to put up, if Mr. Stein would put up exhibit 11 for a minute, 11. Yes. I'd like to give you an orientation before I play the video for you. Oh, now you're confused. This is the map that I wanted to show you. The video is going to start. Okay, so here's the property line of the subject Hill Street property right here. Okay, this property here is where the water course goes under Hill Street. Okay, and this is on Mr. Pereira's property, who owns the property here that abuts the property of the subject property. Mr. Stein is here, and then the Parkers are here. I am all the way over here. That's my property right there. So on the video, what I'm going to show you, and I took the video on December 18th, the day before the last meeting. What I'm going to show you is, I'm going to show you it will start with the water going under Hill Street. I will then track the water course. The water course then heads north to northeast, and I will come to about the property line, and I will give you an idea of the wetlands. There's roughly, the day that I shot them, there's roughly 8 to 10 to 12 inches of standing water, all in this area here that you were not shown during the site visit. Okay, so that's the orientation of what you're going to see on the video. Mr. Stein, can you play the video, please? Yep. So there again, I'm tracking to the north along here, along Mr. Pereira's property.
Mr. Stein, can you mute your laptop?
I don't think the sound's not coming through up there, is it?
There was a lot of feedback.
Yeah, you'll have to put your laptop on mute.
Sound is a big part of it.
Correct.
Well,
Anyway, go ahead.
Zoom speaker on mute, so it won't project. Play it.
All right, after this video finishes.
So there we started to track east toward the subject property line. You can see fairly deep water pooling on the property. You're now going further to the north along the Pereira property, now toward the subject property. You can see extensive water, standing water on the subject property on the west.
Sorry.
Roughly central portion of the property.
I would have said that needs to be investigated further.
Again, that's looking more toward the northern end of the property, along the east side of it. As you can see, significant standing water throughout the property. And that is the brief video that we have. So contrary to what may have been suggested, this is not a dormant, low-functioning wetlands. This is a significant wetland with anywhere between 6 to 10 to 12 inches of standing water. There's a significant water course running along the east side, running north to south under Hill Street and out into the 5 Mile River watershed. The wildlife that feeds off this property is substantial. I've been there for 27 years. Part of the functioning of the wetlands is the wildlife that it supports. In 27 years of living there, the following wildlife has been on my property and come up from the subject property through my property. We have every year probably a new family of deer, between 6 to 10 deers that run those properties. We have wild turkey. We have coyote. We've got a plethora of squirrels, groundhog, field mice, red-tailed fox, possum, raccoons, frogs, toads, worms, rabbits, chipmunks, a large quantity and variety of birds, turtle. Believe it or not, I had a turtle hatch with approximately 3 dozen turtles in my property on a small wetlands in the front of my yard, not far from the property. We've had black snakes. Interestingly enough, we have red-tailed fox. In the past 6 years, there have been red-tailed fox has gone under my shed, delivered 3 litters in 6 years. And every night at around 7 o'clock, the mother would come out. She would run through my property, down the front, over the stone wall onto the subject property, and would come running back within 20 minutes to a half hour with chipmunk, field mice, and other catches to feed her young newborns. So the property itself, the subject property, is a significant wetland that supports significant wildlife on it. So for anyone to suggest that it's a low functioning wetland is, in my opinion, not accurate. The project that is proposed is massive and, in my opinion, irresponsible. I would like to show exhibit number 2 to give you an idea of what I have seen, or I see that from the exhibit itself, the scope, the massive scope of the project is clear as a bell to anybody who looks at it. This is the applicant's wetland buffer habitat enhancement plan. I personally have taken this and I have put the color hash marks. First of all, you can see the light grayish to blue. That's the scope of the exterior sides of the project, meaning the parking lots, the retaining walls. So those are the exterior edges of the development. Obviously, the green and black lines around is the property line itself. Okay, the red hash marks is the entirety of the wetlands. As you can see, they wrap around and hug 3 of the 4 sides of the subject development. So they come down through here, they run around here and up. Now with Larry talking, he's saying, how do you get your equipment up here? Okay, over here, there's a 44-foot cliff that's created by this development. Okay, this is put at 207 is the elevation, and the very first next elevation is 254. Okay, there's a 29-foot cliff right here that is established by the development from the edge of the pavement up to the very first line on the topography map. Over here, there's a 19-foot cliff, and over here, there's a 10-foot cliff. Now, keep in mind, when you guys were all on the site visit, one of the commissioners asked the applicants, how tall will the building be? And what will you be able to see? And you were responded from the applicants that, oh, you'll just be able to see some of the tops of the roofs. Not true. The development under their application is 80 feet tall. So the 10-foot cliff here, it goes up 70 feet over the top of the northern property line. With a 29-foot cliff, it protrudes 50 feet above the northern property lines topography. And over on the eastern side, it'll protrude about 40 feet. The black hash marks are the regulated areas, the setback, the wetland setback. As you can see, it runs all the way around the property, again on 3 sides and east of the wetlands. Now, as you can see, the proposed development builds into the regulated area on the northeast side, on the central east side, again on the south, western side, the west side, central west side, southern west side. As you come around on the east side, almost 3/4 of the length of the east side, they go right into the regulated areas up here. They also go in and protrude into the wetlands. As we know, the driveway crosses the wetlands and follows the wetlands line. The purple hash marks down below is the conservation easement. By just looking at the scope of this against the property, in my opinion, it's a shoehorn approach, a shoehorning of development that doesn't belong on this piece of property. Now, they say that the coverage is only 30%. Well, the reality is, if we take the 1.32 acres of the wetlands out, take another 3/4 of the remaining conservation easement that is not buildable, and we then determine the coverage is almost 60% of the usable property that's left. Now, the intended scope, you're being told, is a 93 unit apartment complex. I have reason to be concerned that it might be significantly larger than that. If you can put up Exhibit 3 for me, please. Exhibit 3, which you have in your packages, is the applicant's application for a zone change to planning and zoning. And Mr. Karp signed the first page of it, and it's for a housing opportunity zone. Well, you can see on the first page after the cover page, under C, use permitted by site plan approval, that they're asking P&Z to approve a zoning ordinance that allows them to put up, quote, a total of not more than 110 units. So my suspicion is that they'll get an approval from somebody and then they'll file an modification to add another 17 units, which is another 18.28% of density on the already overcrowded property. If you look at page 2 of their housing opportunity zone, you'll see that their building requirements are 80 feet high, 5 stories, an accessory use building that's 20 feet high with a 1.5 stories, with a minimum square footage of 500 square feet. Interestingly enough, they're asking for tandem parking. Tandem parking means you're going to put 2 cars in one parking space, bumper to bumper. And that's part of their application, and that's part of their maps. If you want to understand the scope of the destruction they're going to do to this land during construction, all we need to do is look at the scope of the rock and ledge that they're going to blast and take out of this property. Their engineers, Mr. Soley, said it's 30,000 cubic yards. If you look at exhibit number 4, the first page, I've done a calculation for everyone. Mr. Soley said at P&Z it's going to be 28 triaxles of materials that will be trucked through the site and off-site. We had estimated 19. The difference is we calculated based upon the use of a 20 cubic yard triaxle. Mr. Soley calculated based upon the use of a 15 cubic yard triaxle. So a cubic yard, according to the authorities on the internet, range between 1.3 to 1.6 tons of material per cubic yard. So if we take a conservative 1.4 tons with 30,000 cubic yards, we'll have 42,000 tons of material being taken out. When you multiply that by 2,000 pounds a ton, you have 884 million pounds of materials that they're proposing to excavate, blast, crush, load into trucks, and take off this site. Each 15-yard steel bed triaxle dump truck without a load weighs 24,000 pounds approximately on average. So therefore, the total weight that's going to be put on this driveway by the excavation of the rock and materials alone is 2,800 trips, just the weight of the truck, because that's coming in to be filled up. That's 67,200,000 pounds of material. Then they will have 2,800 trucks leaving the site at 24,000 pounds per truck and 30,000 pounds of material. That will be another 151,200,000 pounds of materials that are going to be put on the driveway that doesn't have a pavement and on Hill Street. The total weight of trucks coming in and trucks going out with materials loaded just to remove the 30,000 cubic yards is 218,400,000 pounds of materials. Why is this important to inland wetlands? Why does 218 million pounds going through a dirt road through wetlands, why is that important? First of all, this wall has the driveway itself has boulder retaining walls. None of the boulder retaining walls have poured structural footings to support the weight of the boulders. They don't have any structural rebar holding the boulders in place. The driveway has porous sublayers consisting of gravel and sand set on top of soft soils deep in wetlands. When you put a load of 218 million pounds from rock alone, that is going to cause a lateral load on that material, which is going to force the boulders out wider and cause a greater intrusion into the wetlands. In addition, the truck is going to, the weight of this trucks are going to destroy whatever driveway is there now It's going to cause the driveway to collapse. And there's a substantial likelihood of one or more trucks tipping over and dumping its load right into the wetlands. Trucks and cars present a significant hazard to the wetlands from the release of the following byproducts of car and truck. You have diesel fuel and gasolines. You have diesel fuel treatment fluids, preventing diesel from gelling in the winter and clogging the fuel lines. You have brake fluids. You have motor oils. You have hydraulic fluids, transmission fluids, and heavy grease. Heavy grease trucks have significant moving parts that get heated to hundreds of degrees during operation. They need to be lubricated, the moving parts. And way they lubricate them is there are grease fittings in the chambers of the moving parts. And they hook up heavy commercial grade greases to these grease fittings. And it's almost like a caulk gun. They fill these chambers to lubricate the moving parts. And when they do that, the only way to know whether the chamber is full is when the grease starts to squeeze out of the grease fitting and out of some of the seals. As a result, that leaves deposits of heavy commercial grade grease exposed to the elements. Nobody wipes them off. So as a result, when you have trucks that are heating up to hundreds of degrees, the grease starts to soften and starts to turn to be able to drip off the trucks onto the roads and onto this driveway. And those will end up in the wetlands, no question in my mind, causing substantial damage to the wetlands. Now, this commission asked the applicant, will you have to remove the same amount of material if you had two single-family residences? Mr. Stone and Mr. Donay said, well, about the same. Well, that's not true either. Let's look at exhibit number 4, if we can, please. Let's start with the development. And again, this is one of the applicant's own drawings that our engineers simply did some calculations for the benefit of the committee members. So the scope of the footprint of the development covers 88,000 square feet. Okay. You can see how close to the property line is the northwest corner and across the north and across the north and northeast section. Okay. Yeah. If we look at the applicant's drawing of the two single-family residences, we see that the total footprint is only 50,000 square feet versus 88,000 square feet. That's a 76% difference in the cover. Okay. In addition, this two single-family resident dwelling doesn't come anywhere near the property lines. There is a round circle which is called a stockpile area. I assume that's going to disappear once the two homes are fully constructed. So really, you're looking at this right here as the top of your drawing. You can see there's a substantial gap between the edge of the house to the northwest. You can see a massive gap along the central portion of the northern property line of the applicant. And you can see even more of a massive gap along the eastern side. So for them to suggest to you that the same amount of material is going to be coming out for the two-family residence is ludicrous. More important, this scale is 1 inch equals 20 feet. This scale for the home is 1 inch equals 30 feet. I wanted to be fair because this is going to show larger because they're squeezing the houses in a smaller scale. So what I did for the commission members. Is I rescale the footprint of the development. And as you can see, the red line on the exterior is the footprint of the development rescaled to the same as the house. 1 inch equals 30 feet. Okay? As you can see, the house comes nowhere near the northwestern property line, comes nowhere near the northern property line. The development itself extends substantially higher to the north and northeast than the 2 single-family homes. And what the red hashing is the entire area where the 2 single-family homes elevation, okay, is significantly, I'm sorry, where the elevation of the 93-unit complex is significantly lower than the houses, which means it's the area where the materials have to be taken out to accommodate the 93-unit development. So as you can see, substantial additional materials have to be taken out for the development than what you were led to believe. The only area where the elevation is slightly lower for the 2 single-family homes is where the driveways need to be excavated, the private driveways. So this area has slightly more material that has to be taken out to construct the driveways, okay? But there's another problem for the applicants. When they tell you that substantial materials have to be taken out to construct the home, the 2 homes, totally false. I'll tell you why. If you look at this house here, okay, the grades come right through the house. And that means the houses are being built on grade. They're not taking out material and cutting into the hill to fit the homes in. Okay, whereas on your 94-unit development, okay, the grade here for the parking lot concrete is 213, and yet the grade up top is 230. So that shows the cliff. They have to cut into the hill. Okay, the grade over here for the parking lot is at 211, yet here's the grade for the top of the hill. It's 240. So they're cutting almost 30 feet into the hill right here to accommodate the 93-unit development. It gets worse as you progress north and east. Okay, the elevation at this point is 207. Okay, the elevation coming into this is 250. Okay, 43 feet. They're going to dig into this hill and remove that rock. So when they tell you that the amount of material, 30,000 cubic yard, is about the same that has to be removed for the homes, totally not true. And their own maps tell you that when the homes are being built on grade, they don't have to excavate any of them. So there's no destruction caused on that property from a blasting and rock crushing and rock hauling and rock drilling when you go to 2 single-family homes. That's a viable alternative, less damaging and destructive to the environment.
For the record, this is Angela Jameson. Could I just make a comment with reference to those interesting maps that
Please.
you put up? The commission never approved an application to build specific 2 single-family homes. All we have approved thus far is the construction of the driveway. So we did not, either in 2014 or 2018, approve the construction of 2 single-family homes.
I fully agree with you 100%, but you approved the driveway based upon it servicing 2 single-family residences, and that's in your decision in 2018. And that was the presentations made to you people by the applicant in 2018, that it was going to service 2 single-family homes, only 2 single-family homes, and it had nothing to do with an affordable housing complex. When I agree with the commission has not approved any development so far, either a 2 single-family home or a 93 complex. Thank you for the clarification. Let's talk about the rock crushing. Mr. Soley, one of the engineers for the applicant, has said that there will be blasting and crushing, and they will put a rock crusher on site to handle this material. And he claimed that it was going to be up to 5 months of rock crushing. The reality is it's probably going to be far more than that. There is nowhere on this property to line up enough 15 cubic yard triaxles to handle volume of running approximately 6 trucks an hour, which is what Mr. Soley said. But be that as it may, we still have almost 5 months of rock crushing. That will create a substantial risk and serious injury to the entire east side of New Canaan and substantial destruction to the Hill Street property, and more important, to the wetlands. I have a brief video that I want to show you of a rock crushing plant in operation. Now, it may not be 100% the exact one that Mr. Carp may or may not use, but there are 3 or 4 critical elements of a rock crushing plant. One is the hopper. That's where you dump all of the rocks into to be crushed. 2 is the crusher. 3 is some type of a conveyor to move from the rock crusher to screen it at the end. And then you have a catcher or a screener at the end. And then you will have a massive front end loader that will come across, pick the rocks up, lift them up roughly 13 feet and dump them into a dump truck. But I'd like the commission just to understand the levels of dust that are thrown off by a rock crushing plant.
Catherine, can you open my mic? It's pretty important.
Let's,
Possible.
let me see.
Here, just come here. So if you, Ms. Holland, if you mute your sound,
It's gonna,
then he
it'll
can,
create a reverb and a feedback.
Right.
Right.
Just like-
Just don't want to throw us completely offline here. Okay, think I've put mine on mute, so let's see if that,
just before we start, I'm sorry, I apologize. Just before we start, what I'd like the commission to look at is the level of dust in the air coming from the rock crusher, coming from when the trucks load the hopper to start the process, when the conveyor belts, and when they dump. I'd also like you to focus on the fact that just before the rocks go into the crusher, there are 2 water jets trying to wash the rocks. As you can see from the video, after it comes out of the crusher, the water has done nothing, okay? And more importantly, look at the crushing and conveyor belt machines, look at the ground. You're gonna see inches of white powdery dust, and I'll explain what that is after we see the video.
If you can't do it, it's okay.
I give it a try.
I'm just gonna play this.
We don't regulate noise, so it doesn't really pertain to inland wetlands, but I get the point that you wanted to hold.
This is.
We'll look at the dust.
This is what's gonna happen.
You see the water jets right there hitting the rocks before they go into the crusher. Here are the conveyor belts where the materials are coming out of the crusher. Look at the level of dust in the air around the crusher. Look at the ground for the white powdery substance. Look at the white smoke just pouring out of the crusher there.
Do you know the location of this video or anything on it?
I could give you more
I'm
information.
just curious.
I was just using this as a sample. This is the end where they sift through and look at all of the dust. Look at the dust on the ground. Look at all over the machines. That's loading it at the beginning. Now, the applicant may claim that they're gonna use water to try to control the dust. The reality is, water cannot control a level of dust that you've just seen. In addition, watering has its own adverse consequences to the wetlands. First of all, it doesn't remove all of the dust from the air. It allows silica during the construction to run off into the soils. Unless you remove every single day the silica and the dust that is poured on the ground on the construction site, put it into dump trucks, cart it off site, and bring it to a licensed dump facility, what will happen is it will dry out in the sun, and with the wind, it will become airborne throughout the wetlands, the Hill Street property, and the neighborhood. Now, in terms of crystalline silica dust, you heard the expert or the engineers talk about it somewhat, but if you look at Exhibit 6 in my materials, there is an article by the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health that outlines the risks to the neighborhood and to anybody on the construction site and in the area of what breathing silica dust involves. Silica dust occurs when
Give them a minute or two.
quartz is crushed in rock and granite. It leads.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Angela Jameson again for the record. Our concern, our purview is responsibilities with the wetlands, not with noise. So we can look at your documents. I think they're very interesting. We'll certainly take a look at them, but maybe we can just kind of move through anything that pertains to noise, etc., that isn't primarily about the impact on the wetlands, with a little speed.
Or health risks.
I am happy to move forward. We have a right to present our entire case to you guys, and I will try to limit to the extent of the damage to the wetlands and the surrounding property.
You indeed do have that right, and we respect that. So
Thank you.
please proceed, but neither noise nor health risks are our purview. Those are the responsibilities of other parts of the town.
The risk to the wetlands and to the nature that's in the wetlands is part of the purview of this Wetlands Commission. So to the extent that silica dust causes cancer in humans and also in the animals that roam and run and drink from the wetlands, I think it's relevant. I will move to exactly to the effects on the wetlands.
Great.
That's in Exhibit 7 to my materials. Exhibit 7 is an article by the Our Endangered World in January of 2022. According to the article, silica occurs in the form of crystalline silica that is known as quartz. Quartz is not hazardous until and unless it is harvested through rock crushing, drilling, and blasting. The smaller the particles, the more harmful the silica dust becomes to the environment. Causing silica dust can cause respiratory tract problems in animals that are exposed to breathing the dust, ingesting plants with silica dust laced on the plants, or drinking contaminated water. Silica dust increases the abrasion on leaves, which reduces the photosynthesis process, decreases seed production, impairs seedling growth, and increases plant disease. That are the effects that you are going to see on the vegetation in the wetlands. It also decreases the microbial activity in soil, which can decrease water content. It makes it difficult for plants to absorb nutrients when the water content is removed or significantly decreased. Silica dust significantly affects amphibians by being inhaled, ingested, or absorbed over a period of time, causing weight loss, emaciation, abnormal gait, acute toxicity, cardiac arrest, and death of amphibians. Harmful effects of silica are greater at the ground level because of settling on the plants, soils, rocks, and nearby surfaces, including waters and wetlands. The harmful effects are often greater further away from the blasting as they are carried to neighborhoods and surrounding areas in the wind. Animal species on the ground get higher toxicity levels, such as earthworms and small mammals. It can affect aquatic organisms since it settles in water sources. Soil contamination makes it difficult for plants to grow, thereby affecting plant, shrub, grass growth in wetlands and other areas. There has been some discussion by the applicant about the flow of water over the north side of the property and whether they have to accommodate the volume of those waters in their stormwater detention system. I've lived in that neighborhood for 27 years. My driveway is 4/10 of a mile long. My driveway runs east to west and terminates on Brushy Ridge Road, just short of the top of the hill of Brushy Ridge Road. Therefore, all properties to my north of my driveway are uphill from me, and the properties to the south of my driveway are slightly downhill and are tipped toward the east. So the flows over this property's northern edge comes down from the north and down from the properties below the driveway running east. It will hit smack into the middle of the entire north property line of the subject property. If they don't accommodate those volumes of water or the volumes of water that comes through the middle of a sheer rock ledge through the fissures and the spacing and gaps in the walls, where you see on a throughway, a sheer rock wall in the wintertime has ice all through the middle of it and down the bottom. That's water dripping through the crevices and the fissures in the wall. If they don't accommodate, which they've admitted they didn't, because according to Mr. Donay, the water somehow is going to miraculously split and go around the development site. When he realized what he had said, he now says he's going to control the water flows with a berm along the northern property line. Well, I'd love to see how he's going to do that, honestly, because when you look at the northern property line, first of all, they're developing within 1 to 2 or 3 or 4 feet of the actual property line itself. There's no area to put a berm there. In addition, the topography on the north starts at approximately 213 here and goes to about 260. So there is a side breeze flow as well as a northern to southern flow across the property. So if they're going to try to berm this around this property, guess what? The only place they can do it is they can dump it on the Parker's property, or they can dump it on Jeff Stein's property, which is right here. And that is illegal.
Excuse me, Mr. Stein, are you able to coordinate and put that up on the?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Good.
The case of OKIE versus Becker is a 2012 Superior Court case. It says, quote, and here's the standard as to when a landowner cannot dump waters and redirect surface waters. Quote, a landowner may not use or improve his land in such a way as to increase the total volume of surface water which flows from it to an adjacent property, or as to discharge it or any part of it upon such property in a manner different in volume or course from its natural flow to the substantial damage of the owner of the contiguous or adjacent property. Now, that case cites a 1932 Connecticut Supreme Court case. So this has been the law in Connecticut since 1932. It also cites a 1982 Connecticut Supreme Court case for the identical principle of law. So when Mr. Donays comes to you and says, we're going to divert all of the water that's going to flow over the top of that northern edge of the property, and we're going to divert it sideways through the use of a berm, following the normal course of part of the water flow on the north, they're going to dump it on the neighbors' properties. They cannot do that, nor can you approve an application that calls for dumping of water on a neighbor's property to enhance the subject applicant's property. There were some statements made by Mr. Kinney, and he's proposing he's going to use calcium magnesium acetate as a substitute for rock salt or road salt. Well, you've heard our expert talk about calcium magnesium acetate. Mr. Kinney said that he relied on 2 articles from the Carey Institute, one in 2019, and he said that was an update of an article in 2010. Well, I've given you those articles, and those articles are not a study of calcium magnesium acetate. Those 2 articles are a study of rock salt, and they both survey the problem of using rock salt. They both survey the best management practices to reduce the effects of rock salt, and they make recommendations on how to make it easier to implement the best management practices. So to the extent that Mr. Kinney at least led me to believe that these 2 articles at the Carey Institute were studies of calcium magnesium acetate and their effects on the wetlands, that is not correct. If you look at the first article, which is exhibit number 8 in the materials, the only time calcium magnesium acetate is mentioned is on a chart on page 11. And it's simply mentioned as a potential salt alternative, but it says the relative costs of it are very high. It says there's indirect aquatic toxicity damages, and the other environmental impacts is it decreases aquatic oxygen. And you heard our engineer tell you the effects of decreasing aquatic oxygen on a wetland, on the vegetation that grows in a wetland, and on all of the species that live and feed off the wetlands. If you look at the 2010 article, you can see that they have almost the identical chart. And interestingly enough, that is on page 10 of exhibit number 9. That shows the relative cost of road salt to be approximately $1, and the relative cost of calcium magnesium acetate is 19.3 times more expensive. So if you buy a $20 bag of rock salt, you get the equivalent amount of calcium magnesium acetate, you need to spend $386. Interestingly enough, the article, Exhibit 8, which is the 2019, on page 12, says that private contractors are doing snow plowing on apartment complexes, supermarket parking lots, mall parking lots, have, quote, a disincentive to reduce salt use for a variety of reasons. Clearly, spending 19.3 times the amount of money on calcium magnesium acetate is a reason that they will not use it. So to rely on a statement, well, we'll just have our contractors use something that's almost 20 times more expensive is not credible. There is an article that was done by the North American Lake Management Society that was published in January 29th of 2009. The article is entitled Effects of Calcium Magnesium Acetate Deicer on Small Ponds in Interior Alaska. That's Exhibit 10. That goes through the negative effects of calcium magnesium acetate. And it says the conclusion, although calcium magnesium acetate may be a less corrosive deicer and less toxic to plants and animals, it has a high oxygen demand and may cause oxygen depletion in bodies of water. In concentrations of only 60 milligrams per liter in standing waters, this oxygen depletion may be so severe enough as to be lethal on fisheries or fish in the waters. Because CMA, or calcium magnesium acetate, is made reacting acetate acid with limestone, the final product may have impurities and contain harmful metals or plant nutrients that might eutrophy the water body. They caution lake managers should be aware that new de-icers proposed for use in the lake catchments may produce new problems such as oxygen depletions, metal toxicity, and added nutrients. So Mr. Kinney's reliance on those two Kerry articles that other than recognizing calcium magnesium acetate as one of 8 possible alternatives, they were not articles studying the impacts on wetlands as he led us to believe. Mr. Kinney also provided a map to show where large snowfalls can be piled on the site. Put up exhibit number 12, please. This is the map that Mr. Keeney, without the red marks, those red marks of mine are all playing over the moment, okay? Mr. Keeney said that he can pile all this snow in this corner, snow storage area, that's 3 parking spaces. And he can, again, snow storage area in the bottom southern corner of the property. He can pile snow in 5 spaces. Those are tandem spaces. That means they're going to park 2 cars there. So he's taking 13 parking spaces out of use in order to accommodate the snow piles. Now, when we get the 1.5 to 2 feet to 3 feet, you're not getting all of that from the 88,000 square foot footprint of the development. You're not getting it in 13 car spaces. You're not getting it in 13 car spaces when the cars are parked there during the middle of the snow. Okay, so there's really a few realistic spaces where this snow is going to go. Okay, here's the first area where it's going to go. It's going to go right into the regulated areas outside the wetlands. And why? Because when the plow backs down to here to plow this, the northern side of the development, I'm sorry, the eastern side of the development, he's going to push it straight right over the stone wall. When the front end loader that takes all of the piles that have been pushed out into the middle of the roadway, he's going to dump it right over there because that's the only place he has to dump it. Okay, he's going to dump it along here, and there's no wall here. Okay, so they're just going to plow it right into the wetlands area and into the buffer area. Okay, they're going to put it here as well because they can come out of here, push it downhill and right into this area. They're going to push it all along the driveway. And why? Because there's nothing preventing them from doing that. There's a 6-inch curb. Okay, and those plows, when they come out of that development with plow blades full of snow, they're going here. Okay, and when they come in the plow, they're going to push it to this side because they can't push it here. There's a fence along here. So, and here, it's going to be done right here as well. You know why? Because these are all parking spaces. This is the only area you can put a front end loader, dumping the snow and getting it off the travel portion of the driveway. So, Mr. Kim's suggestion that they can push however many feet of snow we get from an 88,000 square foot footprint of a development into 13 parking spaces is ludicrous in my opinion. In terms of the parking spaces, I should also let the commission know. On the applicant's footprint of their building, they show 142 parking spaces. That's not true. There's 169 of them. And the reason being They're taking the tandem parking spaces and counting that as one spot. There's tandem holds 2 cars. So that number of 27 should go to 54. That raises the total number of cars on site to 169.
So, Mr. Durkin, this is Angela Jameson again for the record. How much more time do you think you're going to need for your presentation?
Probably 5 to 10 minutes.
Very good, thank you.
Now, Mr. Kenny also said, we're going to control the dangerous runoff here, that carrying all of the oils and depositing them on the driveway. And we're going to get a Timco regenerative air sweeper. Okay. If you look at Exhibit 13 to my materials, I had a portion of the brochure on the regenerative air system. A regenerative air system is nothing but a glorified vacuum. It has no water, no cleaning chemicals. It has no brushes, and it's a glorified vacuum. Have you ever tried to vacuum oil off your garage floor? It doesn't work. And the brochure on Exhibit 13 says the only things that it will remove are trash, paper, dirt, and fines. Dirt and fines are the same thing. Fines is just a smaller level of dirt, or a finer level of dirt. Nothing in there does it say that it will remove oils, motor oils, diesel fuel, gasolines, hydraulic fluids, grease, heavy grease, none of that. So they're not, the system that he's saying is going to take and help keep the oils and stuff down on the driveway through a regenerative air system. It's not designed to pick those materials up. So to the extent that he's suggesting that as a fix, the good thing is he's acknowledging that it's a problem, that all of these oils and car byproducts and truck byproducts that fall on the driveway need to be addressed because they're going to end up in the wetlands. Well, guess what? It's going to end up in the wetlands, and it's not going to be stopped by a glorified vacuum. He then says that they're going to use a snow brush sweeper to keep the volume of snow and ice off of the driveway during a storm event, so that they'll be periodically taking a snow brush system. And I don't know if the members of the commission understand what that is, but it's a machine that has a round brush on the front. And as you drive, the brush spins and is supposed to help brush snow off the driveway. Well, brushing is not going to take the ice off the driveway, number one. While they admit there is a risk to the residents of driving either down the hill off the property or up the hill to the property, and that they need to control the volume of snow on that driveway, it's not getting controlled through a brush. I'd love to know how many other brushes Mr. Carp owns or employs in the town of New Canaan periodically to sweep 3, 4, 5, 6 times during a storm event. You can't sweep the driveways or the parking lots when cars are parked there. You can't sweep where there are heavy snows. They don't accommodate heavy snows. It'll require labor and equipment to be on site throughout the entirety of a storm event. And guess what? Guess where the sweeper is going to push the snow, the minimal inches of snow that it can accommodate, right into the wetlands along the driveway, because there's no anything blocking their ability to do that except a 6-inch curb. There's some other issues that have been raised by the applicants, and one is blasting. As you can see, they have submitted zero information on how they're going to control the silica dust. They have no information how they're going to protect properties in the neighborhood, and how they're going to protect the wetlands with the use of blasting. Mr. Soley, one of the applicant's engineers, told P&Z that any home within 750 feet of the blasting area will be at risk for damage. Well, I did a CIS map search on the New Canaan on the New Canaan P&Z website, and guess what? They only go up to 500 feet. And in the 500 feet, there are 63 homes within 500 feet of 17 Hill Street, and there are I'm sorry, there's a total of 142 homes. Some of that is duplicative. This parcel consists of 17 and 23. So when you run the 500, because I can't run the 750, it doesn't exist on the CIS maps. I come up with a total of 142. So even if there's duplication to the extent of 30–40%, there's still over 100 homes and the wetlands that are subject to damage from blasting activities. Now, the applicant would like you to believe, well, it's a regulated industry. They got to have permits and license. Everything's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. Well, there is no detail for this commission to understand how they're going to protect the wetlands from the adverse consequences of blasting, jackhammering, and crushing 30,000 cubic yards of material on site, and how they're going to protect the wetlands from the devastation and destruction that's going to be caused. Mr. Donay also tells you that the pervious pavement driveway will act as a filter and will filter out all these bad oils and byproducts from cars and trucks. Well, there's nothing in their presentation or in their documents to show that this filter ultimately will not clog and fail. There's no filter that I'm aware of in the world that doesn't get saturated and have to be changed and ultimately fail, and doesn't filter out the intended impurities that they're supposed to filter out. He's not addressed the useful life of the pervious pavement to be used as a filter, or what will happen when the pervious pavement becomes saturated with all of the oils and byproducts and hydraulic fluids, brake fluids from trucks and car traffic. I've not heard of a plan to remove harmful car and truck byproducts that sift through or sift into the pervious materials. In 2018, when this commission voted on the application to allow a 16-foot driveway with two 2-foot buffers, there were 2 commissioners who refused to make the motion to approve the application. There were 2 commissioners who said they made a mistake approving of a 12-foot wide driveway even in 2014. And 2 commissioners said that Mr. Karp's 2018 application was marginally better at best. Let me just summarize for you quickly the history of destruction of the wetlands on this property. And my references here all come from my materials. They're exhibits 14 through 22. I will not put them up on the screen. I will do this quickly. In 2014, you were told by Mr. McLean's engineers that a 12-foot driveway would only destroy 930 square feet of the wetlands. In 2016, when an application was filed by Mr. Karp, Mr. McCord, his engineer, and Kate Throckmorton, his environmental scientist, told the commission that they were able to reduce it to 750 square feet of destruction in the wetlands. In 2017, when they filed another one, Mr. McCord said, oh, we can reduce it now to 720 square feet. In 2018, when the application came before the commission for the 16-foot driveway and 2-foot buffers, which was ultimately approved, the engineer, Mr. McCord, and Mrs. Throckmorton had to fess up, and they said, oh, we were wrong on 720 square feet. It's now 2,036 square feet of the wetlands that will be disturbed and destroyed by our driveway of 16 feet with 2 2-foot buffers. But that wasn't the end of it. After the application was granted in 2019, they came back to you again under a special permit. They represented to Inland's Wetlands that it was going to be 10,000 square feet more of driveway and wetlands materials that had to be disturbed in order to get this driveway in. That's exhibit 20 to my materials. They don't indicate why in those materials. This commission ultimately approved it, but simultaneously with going to you people for the inland wetland special permit, they had to go to P and Z. And guess what? They represented to P and Z that the work they needed to do to the driveway now would disturb 15,095 additional square feet, which is 50% more than what they told Inland's Wetlands when Inland's Wetlands gave them the special permit in 2019. We're not done. In 2021, they came before the Inland's Wetlands for a permit modification. They said because of unsuitable soils experienced in the construction of the driveway, they had to dig 4 to 5 feet deeper. Now, they didn't tell the Inland's Wetlands how many square feet that amounted to. But if you take approximately 240 linear feet of the driveway, that amounts to another 1,200 square feet. So they, in getting the approval to construct this driveway, they told you in 2017 they would only need 720 square feet of disturbance. Well, what they did was they ended up with 18,331 square feet of disturbance in this wetlands. That is 24.5 times what they represented to you in 2016. That is also 19 times of what you approved in 2014. I cannot believe that had the commission members at the time who voted in 2018 known that the actual wetlands disturbance was going to be 18,331 square feet, that anyone would have approved the 2018 application. The additional destruction is to come. We have over a year of clearing the land before they can start construction. We have 218 million pounds of rock and earth that has to be blasted, crushed, loaded into trucks, carted off site. We have concrete trucks that weigh far in excess of the dump trucks. We have backhoes, we have front end loaders, we have the building materials that are going to build an 80-foot high structure on this property. There is no area to stage all of this equipment, all of this destruction and damage, all of the materials that have to be removed, all of the construction materials that have to be delivered to site. This is sandwiched between wetlands and regulated areas. This project is bad for the wetlands. It is going to cause substantial destruction, not only during construction, but through into the future ad infinitum. It is bad for the environment. It's bad for the wetlands. The applicant has a viable, less destructive alternative: 2 single-family homes with no minimal excavation of this site, no rock removal in the northern wall. He received permission from you to build a driveway for 2 single-family homes in 2018. He bought the property after 2 single-family home subdivision had been approved by P&Z. Give him the benefit of his bargain. Deny his current application. Let him build the less destructive, reasonable alternative to a 93 unit and possibly 110 unit, 80-foot high structure sandwiched in the middle of wetlands and regulated areas and conservation easement. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for Mr. Durkin?
I don't.
No. In which case, do we have additional presentations by the interveners?
We'd like to get to the public there. Got some people signed up, so now you're still sharing your computer then?
Yeah, but it's gonna be brief.
I'm just gonna turn this on. I see what's gonna do there.
You switch. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Stein, for the record. I live at 39 Brushy Ridge Road. My wife and I bought our property in 2014, and we abut Mr. Karp's property at the northwestern corner of his property. I have a real problem here tonight because the videos that I built into my slideshow, you're not going to be able to hear them. So we can take a vote and see whether you'd like me to read the transcriptions to you, but I suspect I already know what the conclusion of that's going to be. In the handouts that I gave you, after each page that has a video screenshot on it, there is a page that follows with the complete transcription of the videos that are embedded in my PowerPoint. So you guys can all read that, and I hope that you will.
Yeah, they can also listen to it on their own device.
Yes, it's actually, it's posted to the town website, and I've tested it. The links in there all work, so you can hear all of that. Okay, I'm going to take up just 2 seconds of your time and call your attention to the very first slide here. And I'm going to read you a quote from Mr. Karp from the October meeting of 2018, which was 1 month before you approved the increase of the driveway from 12 feet to 16 feet. And he said to you at that time, it's not a highway. There should be no road in New Canaan that's built that drains into a watercourse, because there's more oil and grease that come off of those than will ever come off of this, which will handle probably 2 or 3 car trips versus 130 on an average road. Now, if we just give him the benefit of the doubt that he was being a bit hyperbolic at that point to minimize what he was saying to you, 2 to 3 car trips for 2 houses, even I think that's probably low. Okay, but if we look at what his traffic experts are suggesting is going to be the result of this sort of density on this property, we're looking at well over 400 car trips a day. And he suggested that 130 would be what you would experience on an average road. Okay, I would suggest to you that well over 400 car trips a day is way too much to have traversing a driveway going through a wetland. I agree with Arnold Karp. A road should not be built through a wetland, and we're asking you to stop that from happening. Okay, the last thing, Mark has already gone over all of the construction equipment that's going to traverse that driveway as well during this construction period. All of these points are things that you can find in my presentation. I'm just going to go to my conclusion, okay, because I really have, ever since I became aware that there was the potential for development on this property behind me, I have been pretty vigilant in watching the proceedings. I attended several. I listened to all of them, as you'll see from the video clips that I put through. And by the way, kudos to all of you for the work that you put in, because it is intensely time consuming, and I have absolute respect for what you do. Okay, but I listened to all of this. Okay, and I really feel aggrieved right now for everything that I heard Mr. Karp represent over all of his applications. And at the beginning of this presentation, there's a quick summary of all the times that he came in front of you to increase the driveway from 12 feet to 16 feet. And my final statement is, I believe that Mr. Karp engaged in blatantly cynical manipulation of the IWC approval process and has made numerous and egregious misrepresentations to this commission and the residents of New Canaan while navigating this process in bad faith. He is directly ignoring the commitments he made to the IWC, and this application, as Mr. Durkin and our experts have said, will bring lasting damage to the wetlands on this property and the 5 Mile River watershed. And I would point out just one other thing. It's not in my presentation. In November, when we started this process, the chairman asked about where things stood with the Army Corps of Engineers. We have consistently been filing Freedom of Information requests with the Corps. And at the time that question was asked, the only thing that had been submitted to the Corps was a tolling agreement. None of the materials that the Corps had requested in July of last summer had been submitted to the Corps at the time that that question was posed. not 10 days later, all of those materials had been submitted to the Corps. It seems strange to me, the coincidence that suddenly all this production could be turned into the Army Corps after you all had questioned where that process stood. And that's where I'll leave my remarks. I hope that you will find the slideshow and the videos informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Commission members, questions for Mr. Stein? Very good.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Shapiro?
Thank you very much. Just very briefly in conclusion, you've heard from our experts, you've heard from Mr. Durkin, you've heard from Mr. Stein. I believe Attorney Smith said it to this commission last summer when the applicant was before you on other issues. You are the guardians of the wetlands. We know you take that job seriously. As you consider your decision, not just now, but in the coming month plus, you are the body that gets to decide not just issue, but credibility determinations of the witnesses that you've heard from, including the applicant. And for the reasons that Mr. Durkin has outlined, we submit that there's many inconsistencies in what they've said to this commission in the past. There's a lack of information currently before the commission for this application. You get to decide the credibility determinations of who you're going to believe before you. The interveners have been nothing but candid, straightforward, and forthcoming in what they've said and what they've presented to you. That credibility does matter as compared to the applicant. And we thank you for your time. We do, to the extent additional information is provided by the applicant, reserve that right to respond to it as well. But we do thank you all for your time tonight and down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to propose that we take a 5-minute break if everybody is amenable to that at this stage. So we'll all be back at 8:08 if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wants? Please come and do so. And we'll also, if you want to indicate if you're on Zoom that you'd like to speak, please do that also. So firstly, we'd like to hear from Andy Mank of 183 Brushy Ridge Road. And if when you go to the podium, you could just announce yourself, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, members of the commission, and thank you for taking the time to hear me and everyone else. My name is Andy Mank, and as you had correctly stated, I'm at 183 Brushy Ridge Road. So for context, that's about 1,000 feet from the property. Okay. And by the way, I do agree with Mark's comments about the Noah's Ark and all the animals. I think you missed the chipmunks, the red-tailed hawks, some salamanders, and a few other things. But those animals that he mentioned have all gone through my yard as well. And let me just mention that kind of what is my approach? Like what am I going to be speaking to you about? Is that, you know, I'm not an expert, and you're going to hear the experts go back and forth. And I kind of predict that the next time the applicants are before you, they're going to tell you that everything you just heard is all wrong. We'll see. But for me, what it comes down to is, I think there's some basic things that as you think about this application, you can consider what you should do about it. So let me try to keep it simple. 5 things, a little bit of a summary, and leave you some things to think about. So first of all, we all know that water runs downhill. And maybe you were in a movie theater your first time and somebody behind you spilled the jumbo soda, and you know what happens there, right? Well, for context, you know, we've been talking about this property, but the area of Brushy Ridge is a big area. The highest point is about 400 feet in elevation. The area at Hill Street is around 245 or so. So you've got a big distance that things, you know, are traveling there. And the Hill Street property, the property of the applicant, the range from highest to lowest area is about 50 or 60 feet, you know, of that passage. That area, based on the topography, where the applicant's land is, that's really a center point for where the water comes down. it's just natural. Water goes from high to low. So that property is in the middle of that pathway. And then for further context, where does the water go afterwards? Well, the topography of the land continues to go downwards as you go down 123. So if you get to the east school, the land there is about 200 feet above sea level. So you got 400, 200. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or an expert to conclude that the water that starts at the top of Brushy Ridge and all that area is going to eventually go down that direction. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense. So that's the first thing, that the applicant's property is in the middle of that pathway. The second thing is that when we change the topography of land, we're going to change the water flow. It doesn't take a scientist to know this. Anybody who was a kid and built a sandcastle right next to the shore tells you that you build your sandcastle, water comes along, man, it changes, right? Your cousin steps on the sandcastle where you don't want him to, the moat's no longer a moat, right? So in this case, this is a gigantic sandcastle project, right? You're moving 30,000 cubic yards of material out of there. That's a huge amount of disturbance. You're going to use explosives to accomplish that. And you're going to take what started out as natural soil and vegetation, and you're going to replace it with man-made asphalt, concrete, and lots of other materials. There's, that the water's pathway is going to change. It's a fact. No expert can come into this room and tell you it's not going to. So we've got water going uphill. We're going to change some stuff. That's what's going to happen. Now, I did see, and I've spent a lot of time in all the presentations, very carefully listening. And there's one point where there's a presentation, a diagram with a hand-drawn proposed existing flow of the water. And it's nice and neat, and it looks beautiful because the water miraculously goes around the construction area, suggesting, and as a basis of the argument, that it's okay, we're going to work in the middle of this and the water's flowing around it. And I have a real tough time just applying common sense to think that when I look at that land and I look at all the elevations of it, it's a natural thing. There's no big valley in it right today that water's flowing down two sides. It's just flowing down different parts. So I can't understand how you can take and suggest that you're going to change that much of the land and not impact the flow of that water. So, and those changes are going to be permanent. There's no undo button here, right? There's no, we'll try this out. We'll drive the car around the track. If it doesn't work so good, we'll pull it back in. We'll make some changes. We'll send it back out. You're going to change the land. That's it. It's done. It's over with. You can't put it back. Okay. Dynamite things. That's the way it goes. The third point is that water flows both above ground and below ground. Now, how do I know that? Again, I'm not the expert, right? But two things. One is where I live on Brushy Ridge, I'm further uphill, right? And when I buy a property, I intentionally do not buy properties downhill because I don't want water in my basement. But believe it or not, many years ago, the prior owners of our property put in a French drain system and 2 sump pumps. Why? Because on a day like today, that pump is going to go off every hour or two, removing water that's underground, going against the foundation and leaking into the foundation. So luckily they've solved that problem. But that tells me that's one of the reasons why I know there's water underground. The second thing is something you'd never expect. But come to my house in the summertime, and it could have, be like a sunny day, 90 degrees out, 80 degrees, may not have rained for 10 days. And walk out to the mailbox with me, and you'll hear a lot of water. Where are you hearing the water? It's in the sewer system. Now, ask the town engineer here. It's not the sewer system, it's the storm drain, right? There is no sewer service up on Brushy Ridge. Matter of fact, it stops at around house 50 or 52. So the water that we're hearing is underground water flow. And asking the town today to confirm that to me, they did confirm. Yes, you're not hearing any sewage. There's no sewage anywhere near there. There's no water, municipal water supply there. You're hearing the underground flows, and they're making their way into the storm drains. That's what you're hearing. So if we take this couple things and put them together, we know there's water underground. It's where we get our well and everything else. That's how this works. And I'm upstream where this is all happening from the applicant's property. So I think it's pretty reasonable to conclude there are underground waters that are going to be in that area that when you go blasting and everything else are going to be disturbed. I haven't heard any discussion of this, any evidence to the contrary. It's just basic common sense to me. I don't think I need to go on much more. The next thing is that item 4 is that, complexity tends to lead to problems. So there is a basic law for all engineers, and any of the engineers here should account to this, is that your job as an engineer in a good design is to keep it simple. The reason you keep it simple is because you're eliminating and minimizing the points of failure and the complexity of maintaining the system. Now, I listened to the lengthy presentation. I heard your questions. I watched your visual cues as you listened to the explanation of the applicant's very complex systems of drains and curtains and all these different things about the flows. And it's not simple, right? It's complicated, and it's going to need, as explained, it needs to be maintained in order for it to work properly. And that complexity is actually a signal to you that there's so much going on in terms of the change that the system must compensate for, that it's a red flag in terms of, yeah, this is making a major change to the land. There's no means of policing the upkeep of those things. So we're talking about use of certain sweepers and use of certain snow removal, maintain of the drains and things like that. Once that's built and said and done, your job's over, it's done. 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now, 30 years, there's no one there policing it. So I don't understand how that is not going to have an adverse impact on the environment. The fifth and last basic sort of Andy, rules of life here is that construction makes a big mess and things get broken, right? You tell me about a construction project you've lived through that hasn't resulted in some form of something going wrong, something disturbing, something that you didn't want it to disturb, the dust getting in the other room, then I'll be shocked. But that's a basic thing. There is no neat way to put on a diagram something and call it the area of disturbance and say that the whole world is sorry if I'm yelling, and by the way, it's just a little bit of the vigor and excitement things. So anyway, I'll tone it down a second. But there's no way to really call it the area of disturbance and then say, this is nice and neat, this looks good here. No, we're going to be using, and you can't put a magic bubble on top of it, unfortunately, to prevent it. You're using dynamite and rock crushers and tree removal and lots of different things. So you're naturally going to disturb basically everyone and everything anywhere near there. So why do these 5 things, how does it all add up? What do we do with the basics here? So first, as I look at it, there's no escaping the fact that the applicant's property is one of the lowest points on Brushy Ridge, and that abundant water flows pass over and below the grounds to create the wetlands in question. It is an active area. There's also simply no way to reasonably conclude that a project which calls for the use of heavy equipment, extensive explosives to remove, crush, and cart away nearly 30,000 cubic yards of earth over an extended period of time in the middle of the wetlands and a conservation easement will not result in irreversible adverse impact to the wetlands surrounding it. The proposed construction will introduce noise, air, water, and soil pollutants. Everything downgrade or downwind from this project is going to be at significant risk of flooding and other pollutants, both during and after the construction. This project will absolutely have an adverse impact on the wetlands environment and the neighboring properties. I can't see how anyone can deny that. The only ones that are claiming it's not are the applicant, who of course has large monetary gain at stake, and the experts hired by the applicant. We've already witnessed numerous issues to date with just the construction of a driveway. I mean, how many hours and things have we talked about this and different things going on? But even the driveway has not been able to be constructed within the boundaries that you've set. Materials have been stockpiled without a permit, something you guys raised and that was raised to your attention and had to be addressed. The Army Corps of Engineering, it has serious concerns. and videos were presented, but they didn't get a lot of attention, which was a little disappointing. But the videos were presented of material being driven and dumped into that area of unknown nature. So if a simple driveway for the development of 2 homes can't happen without all this drama and controversy and the consumption of your good time and the town's resources and everybody else, I see how there's no way for there anyone to conclude that a project of this magnitude with all of the risks that we're hearing can be completed without adverse impact to the wetlands, the environment, and the surrounding properties. And I've heard that statement, there will be no adverse impact. I'm sorry, the Andy Simple principles and some of this stuff doesn't work for me. And then one last point before I wrap up, and thank you for your patience. I think the precedent is a very important issue here, because if the commission approves this application, it basically means there's no more boundaries for future applications. Approving this application tells the developers that the New Canaan Inland's Wetlands Commission is willing to approve applications that require massive changes to the land, abundant use of explosives, excessive construction traffic, and result in high traffic once developed, all immediately next to and through wetlands and conservation easements. That's a big thing to happen. The commission will have set a precedent that cannot be reversed. You cannot change that. Who knows what projects are going to be before you then in the next year, 5 years, 25 years, or ever, or your successors. An approval of this application will surely be used by legal representatives. I can just see it right in front of us as a precedent for your mandatory approval of their application. Because their simple argument's going to be, well, look, my thing's only disturbing this, this, and this. That other thing that you approved, that was dynamite and this, and that was 7 rack crushers and 28,000. But I'm only 20,000 cubic yards, and my thing's smaller. And matter of fact, since you approved that, you have to approve mine, because if not, I'll take you to court. So basically, approving this puts the town forever at risk of litigation. And I don't think that's in anybody's best interest. So in summary, I don't see how there's any way, forgetting all the expert testimonies about how many trucks and this and how many yards and what we're going to do to the wall and whether the wall's strong enough and this and that. To me, like, okay, listen, we got water flowing downhill. That's through that area. There's no way to avoid it. We're making massive disruption. We're going to change things. It's too big a project. Things have already gone wrong on a very simple level. I just don't see this as a credible project that's worthy of approval, and that it will have an impact on the wetlands. I can't see how that's avoided. Thank you for your patience and putting up with me, and appreciate your service. And please make the choice to deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So now we'll call on Sasha Dimitris to come and make some comments. And if you could announce yourself and your address, that would be great. Thank you.
Yep. Is this a appropriate distance from the microphone? Closer.
That's
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Sasha Dimitris. I live at 48 Summer Street, Unit B. So it's the upstairs of duplex. It is right across 5 Mile River from where this is. So I suppose if there were negative consequences and that flooded more, I'd be one of the first people to know about it. And I made some notes because this is totally impromptu from what I heard today. It seems like there are a lot of concerns about this, but the group intending to build there has a lot of mitigation plans, but across the board, they seem very expensive, and it seems like a worst case scenario for both sides, the town in general, is to build something that is environmentally damaging and not desirable from a customer perspective of actually wanting to rent an apartment there. And especially, this won't be built for quite a while. But the sort of macroeconomic trends of rent prices decreasing, accompanied with a very expensive, both in terms of construction and maintenance cost, maybe drives us towards that worst case scenario of an undesirable but large apartment building. That being said, I think the maybe counter proposal, you could call it, of 2 single family homes does not make a lot of sense given current trends in transportation, environmentalism, you know, the popular thought in infrastructure design. No matter where you look at the research from, whether it's United States or abroad, the consequences of multifamily and multi-purpose zoning is very positive, both for physical and mental health. That walkable neighborhoods like we have in New Canaan are incredible for people being healthier, happier people. And that is one of the reasons I moved to New Canaan. I rode my bike here tonight, despite the cold and the rain, because I like riding my bike and I can go get a coffee. So if you ever see a tall, bald man riding around New Canaan, you can wave to me and say, hey, that's Sasha. So I don't think that looking at this in terms of 2 single family homes in terms of environmental impact is comparable either, because it seems like a lot of the demand for housing in New Canaan is driven by demand to have children go to the really excellent school district. So I think a comparable comparison would be looking at multiple single family homes throughout the area rather than 2 in this property, because it's going to drive down, you know, it'll increase availability for housing for parents to bring their kids to school here. So, you know, just because we don't, building fewer houses here will mean we'll be building more houses elsewhere. So as a resident of the town, I guess I would like to support multifamily housing, but smaller. And maybe on a personal note, it's a little bit disappointing to see so many disposable water bottles at Wetlands. So thank you for your time, and
Thank you, Sasha, and thank you for the comments about the water bottles. You know, plastic water bottles can be reused. I have had mine
I'm doing.
had since the 1st of October. I hope that makes you feel a bit better. So moving on, we have, is that Michael DeFelice? Thank you.
Yes, good evening. My name is Mike DeFelice. I live on 37 Hill Street. I've been living there for 46 years now. So I know the area pretty well. We haven't got that much rain or much snow at this time of year. But before, when I first moved there in 1976, we used to get a lot much snow and rain. In fact, in the old area, where Mr. Carp has his driveway and everything else, you'd be pounding the water. I mean ponds of water. You'd be ducks in the water. You'd be a multi-number of deer, wildlife, raccoons, everything over there. In the past that I've seen that he's been doing his development, I've seen less ponding, less ducks and wildlife over there. In fact, I don't think there's any more deer left in there. The deer has been all driven maybe uphill, maybe going into Brushy Ridge. I had deer coming into my yard before. Now there's no more. I'm saying if you, 2-family homes is one thing. Put a multi-building, and like you said before, I mean, in Wetlands, haven't you ever done past any project this much in volume, 90 units or 100 units, or even maybe 20 units in Wetlands? I don't think so, because the Wetlands does not involved all this property. All the property is on Hill Street and going down going down Urban Street. In fact, I hear water, I go down Urban Street on a dry day. I can hear water going into the drains. That's water coming from those wetlands on Hill Street. They're going under those homes and being pumped from the residents into the drains. And that's on a dry day. If you went down there tomorrow, you would see actually pools of water in the wetlands now. And the river, the water brook runs past my garage, right abut my garage. So if you put more water into the drainage from his property being pumped down, it's going to be building that brook up a little higher. And they said icing, I have seen icing in my garage that's down from my house on the walls. So I'm just saying that there is no way. I mean, your wetlands, if you approved it before, that would be one thing. But there's no way you could approve this application for a building of this 90 units. I mean, just the traffic alone coming in and out of that unit. And the water usage too. I mean, he's going to use city water. It's not going to be all well water like people on Brushy Ridge has. People on Brushy Ridge has well water. Over here is going to be city water. He's putting the driveway. There's no water lines going there now. What's he going to do? He's going to hook up water lines to what? For all those units? I've already put the sewer in. The sewer's there. Now he's going to go over the sewer with all these trucks and stuff like that. Probably disturbing that sewer line that he has in it out already. So he's going to have to redo that sewer too. Because that sewer is not as low as it probably should be. I worked for a sewer plant for 38 years. And I realized I watched him put the sewer pipes in. I don't know how deep he went. That philosophy should have been changed, been checked first before he put those sewer pipes in there. That the sewer would run down and carry the sewage down to Hill Street, across, down to Brushy Ridge, and across to Summer Street and down the hill. That's all I gotta say. I really think that it'd be a detriment to all wetlands. But most wetlands, there's only one person involved, or maybe three people. Over here, you have about at least 50 homes that are going to be affected by this building. I mean, Mr. Carp, very knowledgeable, and he builds very good buildings around here, New Canaan, the view, and everything like that. But putting this one in that area right now, where the wetlands are, there's no way I feel that it should be approved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. DeFelice. So next we'll call on Brian Mulheron, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Brian Mulheron. I live on 185 Brushy Ridge, right near my neighbor Andy Mink, who spoke earlier today. And thank you very much for holding this important hearing and listening to the concerns of the public. I've been to meetings with dozens of my neighbors and heard their serious concerns. Many of them can't be here tonight, a school night. And I admit it was hard for me to be here as well as it was for the other hearings. I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old at home, and my wife has graciously traded with me this time. She has been to at least one other hearing, but rest assured, there is great attention on this hearing in the community, and your decision matters to all of us. Thank you very much for your serious consideration. Your important responsibility to evaluate the proposed expansion and the development of a two-family property in protected wetlands, and to preserve and protect the wetlands and water courses from random, unnecessary, and unregulated uses, disturbance, or destruction, is not only in the public interest in our community, it is perfectly aligned with our national interest and the recently renewed authority of the EPA to restore the health of impaired waterways and fragile wildlife habitats. Your acknowledgement through this process of the grave environmental damage that will be caused by this development will resonate well beyond this hearing. As my neighbor, Mr. Mink, noted, a proposal this extreme could impact your ability to regulate wetlands in New Canaan long into the future, and I hope you will take that into account as you decide. My wife and I moved to 185 Brushy Ridge above the wetlands in 2021 for a simple reason: to find a peaceful and natural environment in a lovely town with lots of kids, to raise our own small children, now 2 and 6, while we were caring for my wife's dying mother and her now 90-year-old father. We now know that peace and natural beauty will literally be blown to smithereens by a greedy developer seeking to jam more than 93 households in an area suitable for 2. All while urging us to abandon our common sense and conclude that such violence to our environment poses no adverse impact. It's beyond belief. One must marvel at the unabashed boldness of the applicant's claims. According to the applicant, there's no adverse impact on protected wetlands, notwithstanding blasting out a breathtaking amount of granite, running between 1,000 and 2,800 trucks through the area, installing 93 families in an area suitable for 2, a 46-fold increase in occupancy. With all of its attendant vehicles and petroleum runoff into the indefinite future, this has no adverse impact on protected wetlands. Measured tones, purchased opinions, and stepwise encroachments on the public interest should not distract this committee from an essential function of this body: to assess the veracity and the reliability of the applicant and conclude whether the wetlands will be adversely impacted. On my nearby property, I've watched fox, deer, rabbit, groundhogs, squirrels, kestrels, blue jays, cardinals, finches, and a constellation of other wildlife. How can we believe they will not be adversely impacted? How is it credible? That credibility is yours to decide. And what of the public safety of the wetlands? Does loose glacial till create heightened risk of landslides after the applicant apparently blasts out all of the natural support? You're not obligated to assume that the proposed development creates no such risk merely because the applicant wants you to, or has presented someone who says that it's true. You get to decide. It is also notable that the applicant urges this commission to evaluate the proposal without reference to the commission's prior decision. As was admitted by the applicant on November 21, a hearing that I attended in person, the prior petition to expand the access to this site has substantial impacts on the wetlands. That prior decision should not be disregarded, however, nor should the prior wetlands encroachment be considered ancient history. Rather, that driveway should still be considered part of the wetlands. It is reasonable for this commission to conclude that the prior decision was the maximum permissible encroachment on the wetlands area. Any other conclusion would be a green light for this and other cynical developers to destroy all wetlands in New Canaan by inches with successive applications. In fact, why should this commission believe this is the end? And that the applicant really means to stop destroying wetlands with this proposal? Or is this just another inch on the way to a mile? It is only reasonable for this commission to assess this petition in the context of the wetlands destruction that has already been permitted and to decide that enough is enough. It is also entirely appropriate for you to assess the veracity, reliability, and dependability of the persons appearing before you, and not simply take what the applicant says is true. Once again, the applicant has admitted in the hearing on November 21 that it has been evaluating, one might say plotting, further development of this site since at least 2016 or 2017. Why, for example, was the applicant monitoring egg masses in 2017 for their two-family home? If applicant had been open and honest about the true scope of his plans to blast, dig, and destroy this natural habitat when he first applied to expand the access road to a two-family lot, for example, would even his first application have been granted? Is it appropriate for you to consider that question? Yes, it is. Did the engineers create reinforced walls for 1,000 trucks for a two-family development? When they created that wall under the prior permit, did they intend to seek this expansion notwithstanding prior representations to you? Why did they over-engineer it to that degree? Inferences must be drawn by you from the applicant's own admissions and own actions. Consider how much of each application you have to consider, not just this application, all of your applications. Consider how much of it depends on the reliability, the openness, and yes, the honesty of the representations that are made to you. You are entitled, in fact, obligated, to decide what you believe and whether you're satisfied. Are you satisfied, for example, that the applicant has presented sufficient evidence supporting its assertion that the developer is controlling for a 100-year event, given our changing climate? Has the applicant presented sufficient evidence that they've measured the runoff rates and controlled for them adequately? Has the applicant accounted for the inevitable pollution from a 46-fold increase in the occupancy of this property? And don't abandon common sense either. Mere process does not require that you abandon your own common sense. Step back and ask yourself, what are the chances that blasting out this mountain, running up between 1,000 and 2,800 trucks through the area and installing 93 new families in an area suitable for two will completely destroy the wetlands they've only partially ruined through their first application? That it will drive away the wildlife that we have seen walk through our property on many occasions? Thank you for your consideration of this important issue. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for considering all of the children and families, the dozens that live nearby, the health of the wetlands wildlife, and yes, even the surrounding humans. Like my son, 6-year-old, and my daughter, a 2-year-old, they depend on you. And if I'm ever able to exit my neighborhood again, after 93 new households are installed, and I have a chance to come to this town hall and see you again, I'll thank you for your work.
Thank you for your comments. So I would just like to see if there's anyone who's joining us via Zoom who would like to make a comment. If you do, could you use the raise your hand function on Zoom so that we can see that you are announcing yourself?
They could turn their camera on as well.
Oh, and also please turn your camera on.
No, I'm not seeing anyone.
Okay, you see one.
I see one. Oh, here's one. Photo. Here she is.
Thank you. So please could you tell us your name and your address?
Yes, I'm assuming you're speaking to me.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I can't see your name.
No, that's all right. I'm Allie Shilp. I live at 47 Brushy Ridge Road. I want to say that we have wetlands run through our backyard. My property abuts part of this construction that's intended, or the property in discussion. We have wetlands that run on both sides. Both flood continually, and we are an above property. So I can't imagine the flooding that happens to the below properties. I am a civil engineer by trade. In fact, I'm a hydraulic civil engineer by trade. So I do water runoff, and the amount of runoff that comes through my property I've seen the plans that they have. What they're using to collect it is not capable of collecting the amount of runoff that comes off of all of these properties. I am aggrieved by the fact that we are using that this giant thing is being put back there, the amount of work that's going to be done, the amount of pressure on the environmental system, the amount of pressure on the wetlands, the amount of pressure on the foliage, everything that's around there. It's heartbreaking and super concerning. And I really suggest you guys, please do not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anybody else who's joining us via Zoom who has put their hand up?
I do not see anyone. If they
Sorry.
Here in still in the town hall.
Ah, very good. We have somebody here in town hall. I'm sorry, I was so busy looking at the Zoom. If you would like to come forward, and we'd ask you also just to put your name and address here and then go to the podium and announce yourself. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. My name is David DePanny. Of course, I am one of those individuals that bought a piece of property downhill from this proposed site at 17 Hill Street. Back in 2009, I built a home and dug my own foundation. And when I tell you the amount of water, the groundwater coming off of this property is tremendous. This entire process has been nothing but an educational process for me personally. Sorry, I sound a little bit nervous. I have nothing prepared, but back in one of the wetland meetings, one of my major concerns was water. And I spoke at that meeting, and it's now become reality that it's going to be a bigger impact with the water on my property. I bought the property knowing that something was going to be built someday in the back, residential homes, whatever, whatnot, nothing to the magnitude of this. We were all under the assumption that 2 single-family homes were going to be built. And It's reasonable. So with the amount of water that is on the property, I'm worried about flooding. I'm worried about my foundation cracking. Who is going to protect me? Who is going to protect my rights? Who is going to protect me from not flooding? And the answer to all of this is you. You are the ones that can stop this. I'm a firefighter by trade. I run into things, emergencies, and nobody's asking for the help. We just go ahead and give the help, and we do it. I'm asking you, please, to do the right thing, to keep this application and deny it. I live on Urban Street, downhill from all of this. Other people that are here too live on Urban Street as well. As a child, I grew up on Summer Street. I played in the 5 Mile River every day. My parents loved it, so it was a great experience for me. But that river can become, the banks will overflow during a storm. There is a pipe that goes under Route 123 that directly comes out from my mother's house that goes under Route 123 to this property. And it's a significant size pipe that filled, and the water will go right up over that pipe, and everything came from this property, 17 Hill Street. So I am afraid of the water. I'm afraid of the cracking. I don't mean to make a joke. My wife always wanted a swimming pool, but not in my basement. So I have pumps going all the time. And I wish that you would just deny this application, please. And I also want to say on a different note that thank you for all your hard work, listening to all this. I know it's a difficult situation to decide on both sides, but I'm speaking from my heart. Please do the right thing. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. DePanny. So I just want to make sure there's nobody else in the room, or
Got one more.
we've got one more on Zoom. So we'll go to Zoom, and then we've got, I think, one more person here in Town Hall who'd like to speak. What's the name of the person?
That's Betty Levistic.
Okay,
Hi.
Betty Levistic.
Yes, hi, good evening. Betty Lavostic, 69 Old Norwalk Road. I'm here on Zoom. I will keep my comments very brief. First, I want to say I've gone to meetings for over 20 years, and by far this was the most thorough video and presentation I've seen. A lot of research gone into it, and I thank the residents who came up to the podium to speak. I will keep my comments very brief. About 10 years ago, a gentleman from the West Norwalk Association walked the entire length of the 5 Mile River, starting in New Canaan, all the way down to Long Island Sound. He was trying to identify neighbors and if there were issues with wetlands and flooding. And from his effort, I guess around 2009 or so, our group was formed, just called the Friends of the 5 Mile River. We had residents from New Canaan, Darien, Rowayton, and West Norwalk involved. And from that effort, different communities had commissioned a report done by Malone and McBroom, and they identified hotspots. So although your commission here is concerned with wetlands and watercourse regulations, in essence, there are also people's lives and properties that are impacted by this. So what happens here at Hill Street also impacts neighbors not only in New Canaan, but downstream in Darien, West Norwalk, Rowayton, and down to the Long Island Sound. So I wish you good luck with your decision on this. But what you are doing is not only impacting the wetlands, but also people's lives here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we have one other person here in the room, Mr. Braccia, if you'd like to announce yourself in your address. Thank you.
Joe Braccia. I have the properties at corner of Hill and Urban. Some of you, I remember, I started in 14 as the intervener on this throughout. And my biggest concern, like David's, has always been the flooding. I get water in my basement already. I have some pumps. Since this project has started, this driveway has been built, which wraps around my whole property. My property abuts the wetlands. This driveway now wraps around it. Since this driveway has been built, my pumps are working far longer. I'm getting more water now due to it. This is a concern that I've had, and it's happening. If you look back to 18, Steve Trinkus, my engineer, pointed out then that the driveway they were proposing was not going to work. The issue with the fill they were using over wetland soils and so forth. He brought it all out then, and it's happening. It's failing already, and it's not even done. I agree with Mark, did a great job with the whole history on this, so I'm not going to bore you with all of it. But yes, we've been there since 1931 on that property. We used to skate back there in the winter. That's how much water you get. And one other point, when they were constructing this driveway, just the nature of what we're dealing with, when they were building it, they dug too close to the property line and they collapsed a portion of my driveway. Now, I called the town engineer to put it on record. While I was out there, I ran into their site monitor and he made note of it. But just as a point, this is what we're dealing with. And if we expect them to do more, they're not going to play by the rules. I mean, a simple thing like that, they've already collapsed my driveway. What else are they going to do with the rock crushing and so forth? It's only going to get worse. So I really hope you deny this. I wish you had denied it back in 18 and we didn't do it, and I'm getting more water. I just hope you can deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We've got
Paul X.
Paul X, if you would like to announce yourself.
I'm sorry, this is Paul Shop. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your last name.
It's Shop, Paul Shop. I'm at 47 Brushy Ridge. I'm at the property my wife just spoke that is in the northern border of this project. I just wanted to say I appreciate everything that everybody has said, and certainly the commission for hearing all this. As my wife said, we do get a tremendous amount of water that just comes off of our property. And the fact that there is going to be this complex that's built literally 5 feet behind my property line that has a 40-foot wall that drops down into a parking lot, I honestly can't imagine the amount of water that's going to come off. I mean, we have, as Joe said, we have sump pumps in our basement, and we're at the top of the hill that run pretty much 24 hours a day. So I would say the water is going to be just one piece of the issue. I cannot imagine, and honestly, I mean, this is your job. I mean, this is why you guys are on this commission. Can you imagine blasting that much rock out of that woods and it not affecting the property around it? I mean, just think about that. The massive scale of what they're talking about doing back there is absurd. It's absurd that this has gotten this far, and it's absurd that we're even having this discussion, but just think about it logically. Forget all the experts. Just think about what is going to happen back there and destroy the wildlife. Look, the guy filed for 2 5-bedroom houses. Let's just call it what it is. Everybody can change their mind, but this is ridiculous. So if there was ever a point of this commission, I hope you guys understand this is your job to do what you should do and deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have anybody else? I do not. Okay, don't want to stop anyone else from speaking, but if everyone who wanted to speak has spoken, I suggest we move on to the next portion, which is to hear from the peer experts who have prepared reviews. And I propose that we start with Mr. Canis, who is joining us via Zoom, and hopefully put his camera on.
There he is.
There he is.
Okay, thank you. For the record, my name is Joseph Canis. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. I'm a principal engineer with the firm of Ty and Bond with our office in Shelton, Connecticut. And we were retained by the commission to review the stormwater management and the sediment and erosion control aspects of the application. So what we did was we issued a letter early on just for the general overview, and we followed that up with a letter dated December 12th that had some more specific comments on the application. And in general, more information is needed from the applicant to substantiate that there will be no adverse impacts to the wetlands, and that the proposed measures are in compliance with the town's stormwater management policy. I won't go through the letter point by point. You have it in your file. I just want to give you an overview of what my comments were. And I basically grouped them into 5 different categories. The first was roadside safety. And as a wetlands commission, you might be asking yourself, what does roadside safety have to do with wetlands? In this case, my concern was with the driveway in terms of guide rail, because there is a drop off at the end of the wall, and how that crash protection impacts the width available for the traffic on that driveway. So my comments there were, for the applicant to take a closer look at that, how they're going to provide that crash protection, because there is a potential that the wall might need to be modified to accommodate that, which in turn impacts the area disturbance and the construction in the wetland potentially. So that's something I asked the applicant to look at. In addition to pedestrian access, right now there's no pedestrian access proposed. And if it is required, then again, that also impacts the placement of that wall. It might need to be widened to accommodate that. But that's something for the applicant to address. I raise that as a potential issue here because I think the last thing everybody wants is to come back again. We want to flesh out these issues in advance. The next category of comments I had was related to grading. And some of that was, I had a series of comments related to the slope in the back, including the management of groundwater. I had some questions about if there had been done any testing done back there to determine what the depth of groundwater is and if it's been quantified. And again, that's important because it speaks to the volume of water that does make it into the wetlands as surface water versus groundwater recharge. And that's something we want to quantify and be able to take a look at. The third category is probably the largest portion of my comments is the related to stormwater management. A lot of those comments are very technical in nature. But for example, I did note that one of the proposed detention systems is in groundwater. I don't know if that was intentional. I did have some questions related to that because if it's in groundwater, you have the potential for groundwater to seep inside the system and which reduces its overall volume. Another thing I did request was some additional test pits and so that the number of test pits corresponds to the requirements of the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. So there's some additional work that needs to be done there. I also had some comments between the consistency between the calculations and the plans. Those I think are relatively general comments that can be addressed pretty easily by the applicant. I also had some questions about how the system will be maintained. There are elements of the system that are at the low point at the bottom of the wall. For example, we have the level spreader and things like that that discharge on the low side of the wall. And I had a question about how those would be maintained, just general access to maintain those outlet points. I had a concern about the impact of the detention system adjacent to the retaining wall. I know that was also brought up by the interveners engineer. I also had some additional questions about the placement of detention measures in series and the potential for backwatering from one system to the other. And then I also had a comment about drains beneath the building. There's covered parking there. Those drains are connected to the storm sewer system. The state of Connecticut requires those drains to actually be connected to the sanitary sewer system if they're undercover. Those were the comments I had on stormwater management. The fourth category was just general site comments with respect to sediment erosion control. The applicant has provided a two-phase sediment erosion control plan. Because of the amount of earthwork on the site, I think it's appropriate to show that in many more phases to really show how the applicant will construct the property, what their logistics plan is, how they're going to attack it. As the intervener had said previously that the typical way to do this would be to start from the top, and we just need to see how they're going to do that. Are they going to construct a haul road, that sort of thing? So we need more information on how the applicant envisions that unfolding. Another comment I had was to divert the clean runoff, right? There is a runoff that comes from the adjacent properties to the north onto the site. So that was a comment I had to make sure that's accounted for and accomplished as part of the sediment erosion control plan. And then I also needed more definition for the engineered measures. I know there's a series of sediment ponds, and that's probably something that the applicants already calculated, but it does need to make its way into the plans. And then I also had another concern where infiltration measures are proposed. This also includes a permeable pavement in the driveway, how that's going to be protected from overcompaction, because with the constant roll of construction traffic over it, those soils can get compacted, which reduces its ability to exfiltrate. And then I had some more general comments about, for example, there's a generator, a question about assuming it would be a diesel generator, that questions about how the tank would be, if it was a double wall tank, or if there was going to be alarms or anything like that on it in the event of a leak. I had some questions about winter maintenance, where the snow would be stockpiled, and the material that would be used for the de-icing strategy. And then I just had some general structural questions on the wall. Nothing too specific. I realized during a town approval process, you're really not going to get too heavy into structural design, but just some general structural questions on the wall and the placement of the walls relative to that detention system. So those are the 5 categories. That gives a quick overview of the comments that I had. I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission might have at this time on my December 12th letter.
Do members of the commission have questions? So I have a question. It starts with an observation. You have a lot of comments. And as you say, many of them are technical in nature, but there are a lot of them. In your professional experience, is it usual for there to be so many questions relating to the technical aspects of a project like this? And what does that tell you about the complexity of what we're looking at here and the risk that things may not go as planned?
Okay. Well, to start off, I believe my letter was like 10 pages, but 5 pages of it was just listing the materials that I reviewed. But yeah, there are a lot of comments, but I wouldn't say that's unusual for a project of this scope and scale. As engineers, there's and I think every engineer in the whether an intervener or the project proponent would agree the perfect set of plans has never been created, right? That's why the review process exists. And so, my opinion is this is probably about what I would expect, what I expected going into the project, about what I thought it would be in terms of the number of comments. And again, it's, sometimes the information, the engineer has the information. It's just that it didn't make it to the plans or in the computations. Or sometimes, it could be something that's been overlooked. And, that's my role here, is to try to identify what those issues are and if the system ultimately complies or doesn't comply with the regulations. Now, I think the other piece of your question, if I'm sorry, we'll get a little long-winded here, is you had a question if
it relates to the overall complexity of what.
Right, yeah, so
for example, the stormwater management system is very complex. I mean, with the amount of information that we've received at the moment, do you feel that we can be confident that the stormwater management system, for example, will work as intended?
At this point, there's not enough information to make that determination, right? Which is why we've asked for that additional information from the applicant. I think the basic elements are there, but it also has to be viewed in the context of what the impacts are on the downstream property, or if the system itself works together with the other site elements. For example, the detention system is right up against the wall. Yeah, the detention system might work very well for the area draining to it, but it would have an adverse impact on that proposed retaining wall, which means that, there's some design revisions that need to be made. So I would say that there's simply not enough information at this point in time to make a decision to make a finding that it's compliant and there would be no adverse impact on downstream property.
Thank you.
Sure.
Questions?
This is George Perkins for the record. Well, it seems like that we are getting an awful lot of information. There's an expression that we used to use, is kind of drinking out of a fire hose. And it really is difficult to assimilate all of it. So we do thank you, but in some cases, if you could actually just maybe dumb it down a little bit for us, and so that we can follow along. But the presentations have been excellent, and we thank you for your time and effort.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So for the record, this is Angela Jameson again. So we've heard various comments about whether the driveway will be able to withstand all the very, very heavy traffic that there'll be during the construction phase. Is that an area that you can help us to understand? What's your take on this?
Yeah, my concern with the driveway is with the porous asphalt, which it's generally a good idea. My concern is you're going to have construction vehicles constantly rolling over this, and so it's at a risk of getting compacted. I'd like to, I think we need to let the applicant speak to how they plan to address that. But that would be my primary concern. And, there could very well be some underlying structural issues with that. Is the pavement section capable of supporting that? Is the wall capable of supporting that? That extends a little bit outside of what my initial purview was, which was over stormwater and sediment erosion control. But that is something, I could take a closer look at.
I think we'd like them to.
Yeah, I think that would be very useful.
Sure.
We had a lot of discussion about that driveway and what it's going to have to withstand during the construction period. And so this is a question, again, Angela Jameson for the record. This is a question for the applicants. I'm assuming that you will be providing answers to the questions raised by the peer reviews, as well as anything else you've heard today.
Michael Klein.
No, we do that next. Any more, Attorney Chris Smith, would you like to just put?
Yes, we look forward to responding to the inquiries from the peer review and responding to questions, comments that we've heard from the interveners in public.
I'm not sure they can hear you from there, so if you could just move to the front table, sorry, and just repeat that for the record, that'd be great.
Chris Smith on behalf of the applicant. Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, we do. And we look forward, Madam Acting Chairwoman and members of the commission and staff, to providing you and the peer review folks, Mr. Canis and Mr. Klein, with responses to their inquiries to date and responding to the comments that we've heard from the interveners as well as the public. And there were a couple of other comments from the commission from the prior hearing that we will also be responding to. We hope to get that submitted within the next couple of weeks, so you'll have time. And the peer review folks, consultants would have time to review it before the continued hearing.
Well, that's terrific. And we're going to hear from Mr. Klein in a minute.
Yeah, Katie Owsley for the record. I just had a question because I believe that you mentioned, when you're talking about grading, you mentioned that the groundwater hasn't been quantified by the applicant. And so that's information that I would love, but I wanted to see if there's an agreed upon standard practice. Wait, so I don't want to hear necessarily from the applicant that the groundwater is fine and then hear from the intervener that actually it's not fine. And I'm curious if there's a standard that everyone agrees to so that that information can be sort of digested and processed fairly, equitably, I suppose.
I don't know if that's a question that's for the record, Chris Smith directed to Mr. Canis or not, but or Derek wants to respond to it. Derek, do you want to respond?
You want?
Maybe Mr. Canis.
Sure, that would
Thank
be
you.
great.
Yeah.
Mr. Canis?
Okay, yeah, sure. For the record, again, Joseph Canis. I think and the initial work would be to, if you can find a depth to the groundwater. Right. And then, once we determine that, it's hard because there's no real, I don't want to say real, but there are different methods of doing it. And I would have to consult with one of our internal groundwater experts to find, what the most appropriate method would be. There's probably different ways to do it. I think the applicant should first propose a method and then we can evaluate it.
Great, thank you.
And I think Joe, Kathleen Holland for the record, and Derek Dene, the quantification of the groundwater would be across a slope and some cross points. So it wouldn't just be one point. That's what you're driving at, is to get a general understanding of the groundwater for multiple locations on the site, not just in the areas where detention is proposed.
Right. Again, for the record, Joe Canis. Right. What we're interested in is the level of the groundwater, right, where the detention is proposed. But we're also concerned with because there is there's going to be cut at the rear of the property that I assume would probably intercept the groundwater table. Right.
Okay.
So we need to identify where that is as well.
Thank you.
So no more questions from the commission for Mr. Canis, then we'll move on to Mr. Klein.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can, Michael.
Okay. This is Michael Klein. I'm a biologist and a soil scientist. My office is in West Hartford. I'm with Davison Environmental. Doing a peer review on behalf of the town. I've written 3 preliminary memos that describe concerns that I have or questions that I have with Joe Canis. I don't have enough information to finalize any comments and make a finding of what kind of impacts might be anticipated. We've tried to, both Joe and I have tried to get these concerns to the applicant as soon as possible to give them the opportunity to provide this information. So rather than preparing a detailed report, as I said, it's just we've tried to identify some concerns and issues that we think the applicant should pay some attention to. My concerns in those three memos really can be broken down into three more general categories. I didn't do that in the memo again, because these were just sort of quick. These are things you should be thinking about. The first one is the first category has to do with the relationship of this application to the prior applications and approvals on the property. I think that this has the complex permitting history here has the potential to provide or place an undue burden on town staff and this commission in terms of monitoring and potential enforcement down the road. And I believe that the wetlands and the public and the staff would be better, and the commission would be better concerned if, or better served if there was one complete set of documents. We've got a mitigation plan that's been referenced associated with the driveway, but that's not part of the application. There's a wetland boundary shown on the plans that varies from plan sheet to plan sheet and includes delineations that were done by at least in two different or maybe three different occasions by two different soil scientists. Again, this is sort of a housekeeping issue, but that information should be condensed, clarified. Someone has to attest to the wetland boundary for the entire property. If this application were to be approved, it would be my recommendation that a single set of plans and reports that have been relied on be produced, rather than right now we've got a set of plans from the engineer. There's plans referenced from a prior civil engineer. There's wetland mitigation plans. There's Bill Kenny's plans. I think they all need to be ultimately consolidated into one document, one plan set, one binder set of reports, so that they can people can be exactly sure what they're voting on and what was approved. In terms of additional information specifically that we've requested, as Joe has mentioned, and the commission has mentioned, the stormwater management plan is complex, and the construction phasing on a site of this size with this amount of earthwork is complex. I think it's incumbent upon the application to provide a detailed construction monitoring and maintenance plan, along with a estimate of the costs of some of these items, particularly with respect to erosion sediment control for bonding purposes. Same thing I think is true with the wetland mitigation plan. I don't know, because I haven't seen it. It hasn't been included, brought forward into this application. The details of that plan as to what's been approved, what the timeline is for monitoring its success, and what enforcement provisions are included. Made some recommendations on changing some of the plant materials that are proposed. I think there should be an invasive species control plan. There's a substantial infestation of multiflora rose in the northern portion of the western wetland that needs to be controlled, but there's also the beginnings of Phragmites invasion along the edge of the driveway that's been installed. Joe's mentioned the subsurface testing in terms of the stormwater management plan, the efficacy of the various basins and structures that are proposed. But in addition, with this amount of rock removal and this amount of crushing involved at the site, the rock should be analyzed for the potential to produce acid runoff. Typically thought of from a coal mining situation, but it all, some of the rocks in Connecticut could also produce a substantial amount of acid runoff. Like some additional information on construction vehicle and crusher maintenance and refueling, where that will occur. My recommendation is that it be on an impervious pad. The applicant has made references to a green roof providing additional stormwater benefits, but there's no details. My understanding of green roof systems is that they can be quite complex and have implications on the design of the structural design of the building and so forth. So if that's part of the application, it needs to be detailed further. And then the third category of comments that I've had to do with adjustments to the plans, some fairly specific comments. There's a plunge pool that I believe needs to be reoriented so that it more closely aligns with the slope of the land. As Joe mentioned, there needs to be a berm shown on the uphill side of the cut to divert runoff around the work area. I believe that Joe very rightly pointed out a concern with maintenance access along the toe of the retaining wall along the wetland boundary. That's that there's no question that there needs to be provision made for maintaining that wall and providing access either during construction and after construction. That doesn't seem to be addressed. Also, the plan includes swirl concentrators or hydrodynamic separators. It's a proven technology, but it's also proven that it is much more effective if these concentrators are installed offline, so that the high intensity rainfall events, the flows completely bypass the concentrators. The initial water quality flow passes through them. The rest of the storm is runoff is much cleaner, and you have less potential for pollution, and also it reduces the potential for flushing out the sediment and oil and grease that's already been trapped. So those are the specific concerns that we've put forth to the applicant to address. I think if I was to summarize what we're talking about here, the main issues relate to the successful implementation and long-term successful implementation of the erosion and sediment control plan. More detailed phasing is absolutely critical, and also the long-term performance of the water quality measures. The system is complex. It includes some measures that are not standard or typical, and should be thought about a little more carefully in terms of providing some guidance on how they'll operate, why they were chosen, and what the issues associated with long-term performance are for those measures. I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission might have.
Commission member?
It's just a comment from Beth Sanford for the record. It seems between the two reviews that we just got from Michael and Joe. Yeah. that there are a lot of questions that just need to be answered. And we heard earlier today from the interveners that the whole discussion is, for example, about the storm management. And what I read here is that it has not been specified how they're going to be handling the snow and what they're going to be treating it with. So we're here in a position where we can't really judge because we don't have the defined answers of what the plan is. So there's a lot of questions that still need to be answered.
So for the record, this is Angela Jameson. I'd just like to second that that thought. And, you know, we look forward to hearing from the applicants with detailed answers to all the questions that have been posed tonight and in earlier meetings. And we also look forward to hearing from the peer experts when they receive all this information, because it's quite clear from what you have written and what you have said this evening that you feel you don't have sufficient information to really draw any very firm conclusions about the potential impact of this development on the wetlands. Is that a fair summary, Michael?
Yes, I think it is. I think that some of these items are kind of housekeeping and easily resolved. And some of them are a little bit meatier. I think my, it's the applicant's choice how he wants to address these. I think that the way the process has been rolling out and the timing has been rolling out, I hope we get a very complete set of responses that has addressed all these items, because there's not going to be much time available for a back and forth. I think that was one of the purposes of providing these preliminary review comments, is to allow for some back and forth consultation with the applicant. Our goal here is to provide the commission with all the information they need to make an informed decision. It'd be our goal is not to tell the commission that at the end that we don't have enough information to guide you on. So I hope we get everything we need to answer these questions. But right now, as I said, some of them are pretty straightforward and should be able to be addressed quite easily, and some of them are a little bit more conceptual in nature and require some thinking and perhaps some back and forth.
Okay. This is George Perkins for the record. And again, now we are looking forward to that. And to the extent that you can do this, if you could have simplified types of drawings, particularly with storm control. It's a very, very complex issue, but it has a major impact. And it's really important that we all understand pretty much exactly. I think I have an idea of how it's going to work, but I'm not actually sure. So if you could just simplify that for us, I think that would be very helpful.
And this is Angela Jameson for the record. I believe Attorney Chris Smith would like to say something.
Oh, no, I just for the record, Chris Smith on behalf of the applicant, I just wanted to thank Mr. Canis and Mr. Klein for their preliminary comments that we have been working on. We were looking forward to hearing the complete presentation from the interveners and also from the public. So I think now we're in a position to finalize and get the commission and everyone, not only the third-party consultants, but the interveners, a complete packet for the responses. And we do hope to do that in the next couple of weeks, so that will afford time for hopefully a review and responses from the various consultants. And we do appreciate their efforts in this process. Thank you. And the commissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela Jameson for the record. So we would really appreciate it if you can give us something akin to a detailed spreadsheet that outlines
Summary.
what the question is. And then what your response is, and whether you think that it's a significant issue or not, that would be very, very helpful. And we would really appreciate it too if you could get it to Kathleen Holland on a timely basis so we can review it. Because really, if something is delivered on the day of a commission meeting, there is no time for commission members to review it.
For the record, I can't, Chris Smith, I can't guarantee you a spreadsheet's well beyond my capability to do something like that. But I do think we will be taking all the various comments that we've heard from folks and responding directly to those comments broken down by the different memos that we've received from people. And also the report from the interveners consultants. And we are working on that now. We're partially through that, and that's how we would be presenting it to the commission.
Well, thank you. It doesn't have to be an Excel spreadsheet. Just for the record.
That's good.
So just for the record, I did want to let the commission members know that Attorney Smith did provide an extension of time for the commission to continue the public hearing to February 27th, I think it is, right?
We have a storm event. It will go beyond that. So
Right.
we usually do
So-
it next day, but I think we're in front of P and Z the next day with that as well. So we did the same there. But thank you.
Good. Well, this seems like an appropriate time to adjourn the public hearing, unless anybody has anything else that they would like to say before we do that. And of course, the commission also has some additional business that we need to attend to. So
There's no one on Zoom.
okay, so no one on Zoom has announced they want to say anything. It looks like people in the room are speaking with their feet. So hereby adjourn the public hearing. Oh, Chris.
No, and it will
Chris
be
Smith.
continued until February 27th at 6 p.m. presumably.
Yes.
Do you want to do 6 p.m.?
One of those
6 p.m.
procedural
I think
things,
that makes
so-
sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Does everybody agree that the commission that 6 p.m. makes a lot of sense? Otherwise, it'll be here till midnight.
Yeah, 6
No,
p.m.
no, that's fine.
Okay, 6
Okay.
p.m. on the 27th of
I was
February.
hoping just to do that from a procedural standpoint. I wasn't
Yeah.
pushing.
No,
six.
no,
That's
no,
good.
abso- absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think the 6 p.m. worked out well.
Very good. So let's adjourn the public hearing and move on to the agent's report.
Are we saying adjourning the public hearing or continuing everything to the 27th? Just for
It's,
clarification.
we're not closing the. public
That's what I'm
hearing. The
asking.
Public
Yeah,
hearing is not closed. It's just adjourning.
just thank you. I just wanted
Yes,
to be.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we're
appreciate it.
just adjourning for the evening.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Watch us telling me.
Agent report.
Okay, continuing on,
No way to go to bed.
where are we? Let's see. I had two administrative actions, items 9 and 10. If you want to take a peek at those and let me know if you have any questions. And item number 11, I just wanted to remind the commission members that I did send a training opportunity out for the Connecticut Bar Association. We'll be having a virtual training opportunity. It's a training opportunity that some of you have attended before. It's excellent. There's attorneys that you will know making presentations at that bar association, including our own Ira Bloom is being on that agenda. And I believe I saw Attorney Smith's name as well. So it's geared towards planning and zoning, but there's crossover for inland wetlands.
It's
And
towards what?
It's geared towards planning and zoning, but there's a lot of crossover to inland wetland matters. I've attended it. It's excellent. The book they put together is excellent. The town will pay for you to attend.
Also, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I found out today, because Chair Greenwich asked me to find out that I think if you register, it's my understanding, and you can't watch it, you'll be able to watch the video. That's my understanding.
Okay.
If that changes, I'll let you know.
Okay,
Our
thanks.
grant-
Is this in person?
You register
No,
to
it's all
do it
virtual.
remotely, but you can go there in person.
No,
in-person.
no in person.
You Register ahead of time. No, you can't.
You'll get a-
Register if you
Oh, you can still watch it via video.
So if you can't
It's a
do
it's
it
all a Zoom.
live on that day, it sounds like they're gonna make a recording.
That's
But-
an excellent idea.
Yeah, it's a Saturday. But I'll be there live. So if
That
you
does make a
do, the point of that is if you do want to attend, we need to know ASAP because we have to put a check request in and blah, blah, blah. So if it's like, that's great that you can do it sort of another time. But even just getting the manual that they provide is excellent. It's really well done.
But in terms of other opportunities that you presented to us, the training program is more important for us to invest
Sure.
our time,
Yep,
right?
that's standard, always available.
Yeah.
Just go take it. It's for free.
Yeah.
So you just have to register, go on, work your way through segment 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
It's time consuming, but yeah.
Right, just. What's that
takes
mean,
a while.
Angela?
It does take some time. Takes some time to
Have you
get.
done the whole course?
No, it's very good. And I started it and I had some technological issues.
Yeah, I got you.
Because of Apple and blah, blah, blah. But
You're welcome to come into the office. I can set you up at a desktop in the office.
Oh, I'm good at this stuff.
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
Problem with that.
You're
No, you
pretty
won't
good.
have
No, it's just a matter of time, but
Yes.
it's important.
I think it's very important. I think
mean,
it's very
yeah,
well,
it's just-
well done.
So I'm
And
just like, what I'm just trying to say, if I'm gonna spend
Right.
5
I'm-
hours going to
I'm
this
just
thing,
gonna
I'd
give
rather
you
put it
every-
into that course. to
Dan
take
likes me to provide you with every possible, right, Dan? Every possible training opportunity. So this
Yeah. I'm not gonna
virtual
go
one came through for
something
Connecticut
critical.
Bar. It is excellent, but if you were tight on time, I would say do the DEP training.
Yeah, that's,
For sure.
that's what I'm. that's
Dedicate
what
your
I'm
time to
asking, you
that.
know, given-
This you can always do another time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's absolutely fine. And if you need any help, like navigating, getting onto that system, I think I may have heard that they may be having it down right now for
Maintenance.
maintenance or something. So let me check into that and I'll get back
Okay,
to you.
all right,
Make sure that when you're ready to go,
Yeah.
it's seamless. That would be great. I did not have
Good.
anything additional.
Any other items that members wish to raise? Dan, did you have anything?
I don't see Dan.
Oh,
He may have, I don't see him here, but.
Okay, well, if that's the case, could we hear a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion. to adjourn.
Who'd like to second that?
Okay.
Good, all in favor? Aye.
All right.
Great.